Hello and welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Explore our playlist for more captivating novels, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 21, Staying Overnight. The corners of young Miss Shang's eyes twitched. She closed the book and stood up to receive the two, speaking in an icy voice. Thank you for bringing Little Green back. I'm Shang Yuan. As if Shang Yuan was its savior, the parrot flapped its wings to escape from Lu Yang. Lu Yang let go, allowing the parrot to fly freely in the room. Do be careful next time. Fortunately, this parrot kept flying around Taiping Village. Had it flown somewhere else, it would have been nigh impossible to find it. Shang Yuan noticed that Lu Yang and Dao Yaoye were dressed in refined attire. It was obvious to her at one glance that the two were experienced young heroes upholding justice in the Zhonghu. Their attire had actually been recommended to them by the Great Mission Hall. They claimed that the two could pass off as young heroes who had wandered the Zhonghu for a long time. Shang Yuan's attitude was somewhat distant. It was unclear if it was due to her personality or other reasons. Now that Little Green is back, you two may leave. Dao Yaoye frowned slightly, displeased with the young Miss's attitude. Lu Yang pretended to not have heard her attempt at chasing them away. He cheerfully said, "Come on, let's chat. The Shang family is quite welcoming to us. Maybe they would even ask us to stay overnight." Shang Yuan sneered. "Just because the Shang family welcomes you, it doesn't mean that I welcome you. You should leave quickly. Best is if you leave Taiping Village. It's not like there are monsters here in Taiping Village. Why should we leave? Besides, you also haven't left the Shang estate for a long time. Don't you want to hear us share stories about the outside world?" Shang Yuan was taken aback by Lu Yang's words, and her tone softened. "Where are you two from? I haven't left the house for the past month. Can you tell me about your experiences in the Zhonghu?" Lu Yang began unhurriedly. "We are from the Tao-seeking sect, one of the great 5 immortal sects. Both of our cultivation are at the foundation establishment stage. We came to Taiping Village because we heard that there was a demon bird causing a disturbance." His voice was gentle, making him a good storyteller. Upon hearing that the two were at the foundation establishment stage, a trace of joy flashed past Shang Yuan's eyes. The three chatted for a while. Shang Yuan was attracted to the life of cultivators traveling by land as described by Lu Yang. She was inspired to also venture outside to carve out her own path while witnessing the vast world. "I want to cultivate, but my dad doesn't allow me to. He says that cultivation is too dangerous. Had he not gotten lucky when exploring an ancient tomb, he would have long died. I've asked him about his experience many times, but he refuses to tell me," Shang Yuan said angrily. She enjoyed hearing about interesting and strange stories, yet her own father wasn't willing to tell her despite having first-hand experience. Lu Yang sighed inwardly. Looks like family head Shang is also someone with a story. What's family head Shang's cultivation? Reminded of her father's boastful expression, Shang Yuan rolled her eyes. Listening to him blow his trumpet, he used to be level 9 Qi training. However, he encountered a disaster and was lucky to survive. Despite that, his cultivation regressed drastically to level 4 or level 5 Qi training. Dao Yaoye comforted her, "That's still not too bad. There aren't many cultivators in Taiping Village. The village chief who is the strongest is only at the level 7 Qi training stage. Level 4 or 5 Qi training is good enough for a comfortable life, and that's not even mentioning that family head Shang still has some foundation here." Shang Yuan lamented, "But I don't want to be confined to just Kyuhei Commandery. I want to travel the Zhonghu and see this magnificent and intriguing world. We are of similar age, yet you are already a foundation establishment cultivator while I'm not even at the Qi training stage." Dao Yaoye was about to advise her when Steward Zhang knocked on the door. "Young miss, it's time for dinner. Young heroes, the patriarch specifically instructed that since it's late, you may have a meal and stay for the night before leaving. The patriarch, matriarch, and village chief Huang are already waiting for you all." "Got it, we'll be right there," Lu Yang replied. Dao Yaoye originally wanted to decline, but Lu Yang stopped her. "Look, I've already told you that the Shang family is hospitable and will let us stay overnight. How can you not accept their kindness?" At the dining table, family head Shang was seated in the main seat. He was engrossed in a conversation with village chief Huang. The others were enjoying their meal. Although it couldn't compare to the Tao-seeking sect's food, it was still considered delicious. Throughout the meal, Steward Zhang and the maid-servant stood at the side respectfully and attended to them. After the satisfactory meal, village chief Huang went back while Lu Yang and Dao Yaoye stayed for the night in the east wing, with only a wall separating their rooms. Dao Yaoye didn't want to sleep there because she was picky about her bed. Apart from her bed in the Tao-seeking sect where she could fall asleep as soon as she lay down, she took a very long time to fall asleep in other places. She knew that it wasn't a good habit since it was common for cultivators to sleep in the open, but her attempts at changing this habit hadn't succeeded yet. Senior brother Lu, you can really fall asleep anywhere, Dao Yaoye mumbled to herself. For some reason, she chuckled softly before yawning. I'm going to bed early tonight. Looks like I can get a good sleep. Dao Yaoye suddenly realized, something's wrong. Someone poisoned us. She turned to grab her thousand illusion umbrella to open a barrier but discovered that the flow of spirit energy in her body was sluggish and hard to mobilize. She was shocked. Someone actually poisoned us without me noticing. Who is it? This is a poison targeted at cultivators. Since the other party still dared to act despite knowing that we are cultivators, they must also be one. There are only a few people in the Shang family. Other than family head Shang, I didn't sense anyone else being a cultivator. Is it family head Shang? Or is there a higher level cultivator that I'm not able to detect? How's senior brother Lu doing? A string of questions overcame Dao Yaoye's mind in an instant. Before she even had time to think, she heard light footsteps from outside the room. The door opened. Steward Zhang slowly marched in, smiling excitedly and cruelly. It's you. Dao Yaoye widened her eyes, not expecting his revelation. Her heart sank. I couldn't tell that Steward Zhang is a cultivator, which means that his cultivation is higher than mine. In Steward Zhang's hand was a skinning knife. Even from 5 steps away, Dao Yaoye could feel the thick grudge emanating from it. I wonder how many people died under this knife to have such heavy resentment overflowing from it. Moonlight shone on the blade, making it gleam brightly. Steward Zhang licked his lips as he watched Dao Yaoye struggle yet to no avail, like a predator eyeing a ferocious prey that had fallen into a trap. What beautiful skin. I have never seen such fair and fine skin. I know you're from the Tao-seeking sect, and their influence extends far and wide, so killing you will be very troublesome. How could a minor character like me dare to provoke them? Saliva was drooling from the corners of Steward Zhang's mouth, and he wiped them off as he continued, but your skin is simply too beautiful that I couldn't resist taking the risk. Furthermore, you willingly stayed behind to eat at the Shang family. With such a perfect opportunity to poison you, I couldn't pass it up. There was poison in the dinner. Seeing that Dao Yaoye had not given up, Steward Zhang exhorted her thoughtfully, don't struggle anymore. Even if you hadn't been poisoned, you're still not my match. You've just reached Foundation Establishment while I'm at Advanced Foundation Establishment. That said, Steward Zhang didn't let his guard down. I can't treat a Foundation Establishment cultivator from the Tao-seeking sect as just an ordinary one. He had said those words just to discourage Dao Yaoye from resisting. The more she resisted, the tighter the skin would be, and the harder it would be to peel the skin. This was based on his experience. Relax, it'll just hurt for a moment. You'll stop being scared soon. Steward Zhang licked his skinning knife as he approached Dao Yaoye. Suddenly, Dao Yaoye sprang up, her spirit energy flowing without obstruction. She smashed the thousand illusion umbrella into Steward Zhang's face. Just when Steward Zhang thought that victory was in his grasp, he was caught off guard. Why aren't you poisoned? Chapter 22. Who said there's no poison targeted at skin? After getting smashed in the face, Steward Zhang used the momentum to spin and reduce the impact. He still couldn't register what had just happened. The poison he used on Dao Yaoye was supposed to be his proud masterpiece. He had lost count of how many cultivators died with grievances because of it. How could it possibly fail? Dao Yaoye didn't answer. After confirming that the parrot did belong to young Miss Shang, she had become more vigilant. Everyone in the village knew about the talking demon bird flying around. Had the Shang family dispatched someone to look for it, they would have found the parrot easily, and none of these events afterward would have happened. Since the Shang family's actions defied common logic, something was definitely amiss. In addition, young Miss Shang's aloof attitude didn't seem like she was chasing them away but rather warning them that there was danger in the Shang family. She was urging them to quickly escape. A lazy voice came from behind, answering in Dao Yaoya's stead. A compulsory introductory lesson in the Dao-seeking sect is 1,800 common poisons and cures. Do you want to take a look? Steward Zhang's supposed proud masterpiece was just a joke in front of the Dao-seeking sect. Regardless of how skilled he was at crafting poisons, could they be stronger than the ones at the Pill Cauldron Peak? Steward Zhang abruptly turned back and saw Lu Yang leaning against the door frame, hugging his ancient sword and smiling at him. It dawned upon Steward Zhang. Dao Yaoye is not the prey. I am. He asked in a deep voice, how did you find me out? He didn't think that he had given himself away. The entire Shang family is under my control. No one leaked any secrets. When Shang Yuan and Lu Yang were chatting inside the room, he was worried that he would be discovered if he extended his spiritual consciousness, so he chose to eavesdrop instead. That was how he learned that Lu Yang and Dao Yaoye were disciples of the Dao-seeking sect. Shang Yuan didn't reveal my identity then either. Steward Zhang had excellent hearing. Even if they had written or drawn something, it wouldn't have escaped his ears. Lu Yang smiled. Do you know what the parrot said in the village? What did it say? It said, who are you? Where is Zhang Guangjia? Initially, we thought that the parrot was looking for Zhang Guangjia. However, we realized afterward that it was simply repeating what it had heard. That got me wondering. Zhang Guangjia didn't wander the Zhanghu, so how did the parrot hear this sentence? Could there be a possibility that the parrot wasn't saying, who are you? Where is Zhang Guangjia? But instead, who are you? Where is Steward Zhang? 1. Lu Yang came up with a plausible scenario. 20 days ago, young Miss Shang had accidentally discovered that Steward Zhang had been replaced by someone else, and she fearfully shouted, who are you? Where is Steward Zhang? Afterward, she knocked the bird rack and startled the parrot, causing it to fly away. This was the last sentence the parrot heard, so be it in the tailor shop or with village chief Huang, the parrot repeated this sentence. Perhaps the parrot's pronunciation was unclear, or perhaps it was village chief Huang's first reaction to associate it with Zhang Guangjia, someone he interacted with a lot. In any case, the parrot's sentence became, who are you? Where is Zhang Guangjia? Steward Zhang was burning with rage inside. I didn't expect that silly bird that could only mimic others to be the one ruining my plan. If I had known, I would have slaughtered it from the start. However, it wasn't Steward Zhang's first day in the Zhanghu. Despite being surrounded by the two, he laughed heartily. I'm at Advanced Foundation Establishment. If I want to escape, do you think you can stop me? Dao Yaoye was a little anxious. If Steward Zhang escapes, we can only report to the sect and get our senior brothers and sisters to handle it. But whether they're able to track him down is another story. This made Dao Yaoye slightly ashamed. She had only completed 2 missions, and she was already encountering trouble with the third. On the other hand, Lu Yang was as composed as usual, making Steward Zhang uneasy. Did it not cross your mind that since you can poison us, we can also poison you? Steward Zhang relaxed and scoffed. I thought it was something serious. Poison. What use would that be against me? Right as he said that, his skin suddenly became loose, as if he was molting. The skin separated from the flesh, and the shedded skin formed a complete human figure. It stood in the middle of the room, its organs hollow, and it stared right at Dao Yaoye eerily. The body with the skin detached fell to the ground with a thud. Painted skin, 2, ghost. Dao Yaoye's expression grew grave. She now understood why Steward Zhang mentioned that poison was no use against him. Poison had always been targeted at the body, specifically the organs, muscles, and meridians. However, Steward Zhang was a painted skin ghost, his true form just a skin. Who would poison the skin? Besides, why would there be poison specifically for the skin? At the very least, Steward Zhang had not heard of it before. But Lu Yang knew. Just as Steward Zhang was about to flaunt his own body, to his horror, he saw blisters the size of mung beans forming on his legs as layers and layers of skin peeled off. The blisters swelled and were itchy, bursting at the slightest scratch. All Steward Zhang did was rub against the floor a few times, and yellow pus was already oozing out. What is this? Fear began to creep into Steward Zhang's voice. He had never encountered something like this before. After all, when was he ever poisoned? Athlete's foot. What? Steward Zhang thought he had heard wrong. You thought I was just making small talk with you all this while. No, I was waiting for your disease to act up. I knew you would come looking for Dao Yaoye, so for that, I specially left poison that could trigger Athlete's foot in this room. Steward Zhang's face was white. Dao Yaoye's face was black. Lu Yang grinned menacingly as he approached Steward Zhang step by step, causing the latter to retreat until he fell to the ground on his bottom. You, how did you know that I'm a painted skin ghost? If he hadn't known that I'm a painted skin ghost, then how could he have had such a specific poison? Most importantly, I've never heard of any painted skin ghost getting Athlete's foot. Both his feet were itching so badly that it almost drove him mad. He even considered chopping his feet off. He was forced to expend the majority of his energy and power to suppress the poison, making escape impossible. Suddenly, Steward Zhang's vision blurred for a bit, and Lu Yang had vanished into thin air. How is that possible? Steward Zhang's eyes widened. Lu Yang just reached Foundation establishment. No matter how skilled he is with his movement techniques, he can't possibly escape my eyes. It's an illusion. Steward Zhang suddenly realized and quickly tried to roll away. However, it was too late. A cold light appeared as swift as lightning, and a fine line started from Steward Zhang's forehead and ended at his groin. Lu Yang sheathed his sword. Steward Zhang had been sliced into half, the cut as smooth as a mirror. Not bad. Lu Yang gave Dao Yaoye a thumbs up. Earlier on, Dao Yaoye had used the Thousand Illusion umbrella to trap Steward Zhang in an illusion. The illusion wasn't impeccable. Based on Steward Zhang's many years of experience in the Zhanghu, he would only be dazed for a moment before seeing through it. However, what Lu Yang needed was exactly this moment of confusion. He drew his sword, slashed it vertically and sheathed it in one fluid motion. Painted skin ghosts were known for their trickery and queerness, not defense, while sword cultivators were known to be the strongest in offense. Just getting caught off guard for a moment prevented him from having the time to counter, so the result of the battle was naturally decided in one move with no uncertainty. As soon as Lu Yang had seen through the painted skin ghost's identity, its advantage was completely gone. The painted skin ghost stared at Lu Yang in disbelief, mouthing words that seemed to ask, "How did you recognize my true form?" Dao Yaoye looked toward Lu Yang. She also wanted to know the answer. Lu Yang didn't reply to him, simply swinging his sword again and slicing the painted skin ghost into 4 pieces. He poured some spirit wine and set them on fire. The pained howls of the painted skin ghost were eventually reduced to ashes. Who knows if this ghost has any tricks left up its sleeve? Better to kill it first then slowly explain. Chapter 23, Family Head Shang's Past. How did you figure out that he was a painted skin ghost? Dao Yaoye asked the burning question Steward Zhang never found the answer to even until he died. Lu Yang cleaned up the aftermath and used a broom to sweep the painted skin ghost's ashes into a small clump. Taking the hint, Dao Yaoye also took out a bamboo winnowing dustpan to collect them. It's simple. Think back to what the parrot said. Who are you? Where is Steward Zhang? After we met Shang Yuan, she deliberately chased us away because she wanted us to stay away from the Shang family. This implied that the current Steward Zhang was no longer the one young Miss Shang knew and was also extremely dangerous. Thus, there are 3 possible reasons Steward Zhang was replaced. First, Steward Zhang was possessed. But why would an old monster possessing others stay in the Shang family for so long? If it were me, the first thing I'd do after possessing the person would be to leave Taiping Village and find a favorable place with good feng shui to continue cultivating. Besides, Steward Zhang's cultivation isn't worth much mention. Possessing family head Shang instead would be more beneficial. Lu Yang tried to put himself in another's shoes. Second, someone was disguised as Steward Zhang. But this doesn't make sense either. There is nothing valuable in the Shang family. Why pretend to be Steward Zhang? It can't be that he has a fetish for serving others, right? Even if there is something valuable in the Shang family, couldn't he have just snatched it? With his advanced foundation establishment cultivation, no one would care even if he crawls through Taiping Village. The third possibility is that he was a painted skin ghost. Painted skin ghosts love collecting human skin and disguising as humans, assuming their identities and continuing to live among humans. Painted skin ghosts were humans when they were alive and ghosts when they were dead. They could be considered as a type of ghost cultivators. Most ghost cultivators faced some psychological issues. For example, painted skin ghosts hate having their identities exposed. They would try their best to convince themselves that they were human, speaking and acting like humans. When they got bored of it, they would switch to another skin and begin a new life under another identity, repeating this cycle. Lu Yang's reasoning was logical and well supported, making Dao Yaoye look at him with admiration. I can't see any traces of the timid senior brother Lu on the flying vessel. Despite us possessing the same amount of knowledge, I couldn't come up with as many ideas so quickly. This is a difference in our mental agility. Keep the ashes well. They're proof that we've completed the mission. Lu Yang took out 2 white porcelain bottles that were as tall as his palm and stored the ashes in them. The painted skin ghost is an extension of the mission, so it can be considered as a part of the mission. The rewards for killing a painted skin ghost will definitely be more than finding a parrot. There were sounds of running footsteps from outside the room, and they stopped outside the door, as if several people had been jolted awake by a nightmare and come to the east wing to check on the situation but dared not enter. It was not hard to guess the identity of the person behind the door. Lu Yang laughed resoundingly. Family head Shang, come in. I have already slain the painted skin ghost. It's very safe here. Bang. Family head Shang pushed open the wooden door with the matriarch, young miss, and servants standing behind him. All 12 of them wore a relieved expression as if they had just cheated death. Master Immortals, thank you for slaying the painted skin ghost and saving all 12 lives of the Shang family. Family head Shang knelt with a thud, followed by everyone else behind him. As the painted skin ghost was temperamental, after it got tired of a steward's identity, it would very likely slaughter everyone in the Shang family. Family head Shang, you exaggerate. Exterminating demons and devils and upholding justice have always been what we, disciples of the Tao-seeking sect, are supposed to do. Lu Yang had never seen such a grand gesture before, and he was startled. He hurriedly helped each of them up. Family head Shang explained, please forgive us, Master Immortals. The painted skin ghost was unpredictable, appearing in one moment and disappearing in another. I also don't know where he came from. Ever since this painted skin ghost pretended to be Steward Zhang, he forbid us from leaving the estate. If someone visited, he didn't allow us to mention his existence, otherwise, only death would await us. Shang Yuan was also embarrassed. She was originally a gentle girl from a wealthy family, but she had to act like she was cold in her boudoir so that she could get Lu Yang and Dao Yaoye away from danger. Family head Shang continued, it's a pity that I have retired and been living reclusively in the countryside. All my valuables from when I was a cultivator have already been exchanged for gold, silver, and jewelry, which are useless to you, so I'm afraid I can't repay you with that. Please let me know what you need. I'll fulfill your request even if it means selling off whatever I have. He wasn't being polite but genuinely wanted to repay the favor for saving their lives. However, his current wealth was no different from scrap metal to disciples of the Tao-seeking sect. It turned out that Lu Yang did need something. I heard that you encountered a life-threatening great horror while raiding tombs, and that was what made you decide to quit once and for all and exit the cultivation world. May I know what happened then? Dao Yaoye also looked at family head Shang, her curiosity piqued. Tomb raiding, life-threatening, great horror, quit once and for all. These words definitely sound like a very enticing story. Maybe there's even a great fortuitous opportunity. She liked exploring mysterious places and the unknown best. As for Lu Yang, he wasn't as interested as Dao Yaoye in exploring the unknown, but he did like listening to strange tales. Family head Shang's eyes twitched. If he could be honest, he wished from the bottom of his heart that he didn't have to recall that frightening past. However, since it was a question from his life-saver, he couldn't decline. He dismissed everyone else, especially Shang Yuan, who tried to secretly stay behind, leaving behind only Lu Yang and Dao Yaoye. What I'm about to say must not be shared with anyone else. Lu Yang and Dao Yaoye nodded. Only after receiving their assurance did family head Shang recounting the events from 20 years ago. Back then, I, Shang Zongtian, was at the Qi training stage. I was also somewhat famous in the world of tomb raiding. Though not infamous, it was still to the extent where many people disliked me as soon as they saw me. Family head Shang said, arms akimbo, as he reminisced his golden years. On the contrary, Lu Yang and Dao Yaoye didn't understand why family head Shang was so proud of it. What they didn't know was that people in the same trade were enemies, and competition existed between tomb raiders. The fact that Shang Zongtian could have such a reputation indicated that his skills were superlative. Family head Shang continued with his story. I had always been cautious when raiding tombs. I never touched those large tombs and ancient tombs. There are ghosts in large tombs and immortals in ancient tombs. All of us in this trade knew this saying. The ghosts he mentioned weren't small ghosts at the Foundation establishment stage like the painted skin ghost. They were powerful entities that ruled dominion among ghosts. Qi training cultivators are poor, and any valuable items they have are passed on to their descendants. How would they have burial goods worth mentioning? I didn't touch Qi training cultivators' tombs because there was no profit to be gained. Foundation establishment and golden core cultivators have a bit of wealth, and they would usually leave most of their assets to their descendants, leaving a small portion for their burial. It was precisely this small portion that was enough for me to make a gold bucket. Unfortunately, one who walks by the river will inevitably get their shoes wet. That time, I was originally going to dig into a golden core cultivator's tomb. When I got to the end, I realized that it was a tomb within a tomb. The golden core cultivator's tomb was just an accompanying burial. The main tomb belonged to a nascent soul cultivator. According to the rules of our trade, we can't dig a tomb of someone with a cultivation far higher than ourselves, but I let my euphoria get the better of me. At that time, I thought that I was at the peak of Qi training. If I really had to run, my speed could rival that of a Foundation establishment cultivator. Besides, tomb raiding wasn't about fighting. I could be loosely considered to be at Foundation establishment too. I thought that there wouldn't be much danger in raiding a nascent soul cultivator's tomb that had just fallen into my lap. Hence, I offered incense to my ancestors. After praying for their protection, I began to excavate the nascent soul cultivator's tomb. Chapter 24, Great Horror. Shang Zongtian lowered his voice. I tiptoed through the cold, dry tunnel. On both sides were fist-sized luminous pearls that had been glowing for who knows how many years. With their faint blue glow, it was only enough to illuminate my silhouette but not my features. I kept feeling like someone was watching me, which made my hair stand on end, but in the end, there was nothing when I turned back. At the time, I thought it was just a figment of my imagination. I followed the light through the winding passageway and arrived at the core main tomb. Its scale could leave one's mouth agape. For a moment, I forgot that I was in a dark and terrifying tomb chamber. Shang Zongtian closed his eyes and paused, seemingly recalling every detail he had seen then. Only after he was done with his recollection did he slowly speak. I had never seen such a gigantic tomb chamber. The ceiling of the cave was as high as the sky, and below it, terracotta soldiers wielding sharp bronze spears guarded their master faithfully. The lineup of burial items was dazzling, and they were all arranged in a bagua array, subtly reflecting the order of the heavenly law. The ancient corpse had been dead for hundreds of years, yet the terrifying aura emanating from the coffin caused my heart to palpitate. It felt as if that old nascent soul being hadn't died but was merely asleep, and it could wake up from its slumber any moment. It wasn't my nature to be hesitant. I made a swift decision and took away half of the burial items. Just as I was about to leave, I heard footsteps not far away. The sound ricocheted in the empty tomb chamber, making me shudder in fear. What happened next was a terrifying situation I had never encountered in all my years in this line of work. Lu Yang and Dao Yaoye involuntarily leaned forward, eager to hear more. Shang Zongtian showed an extremely pained expression, his voice quivering. I met the descendants of that nascent soul cultivator. They had come to pay respects to their old ancestor. What? Lu Yang and Dao Yaoye had heard him clearly, but the meaning of his words clearly didn't register. Those people brought offerings and magical treasures to pay respects to their old ancestors. They prayed for their family's longevity and to have many geniuses in their family gaining honor in the imperial examination. On their way, they noticed me stealing from the tomb, so they swarmed up to me and captured me. It was so scary then. Even when I think back on it now, my forehead breaks out in cold sweat. The source of this CNTENT is freewebino-vel.co. I think their reaction was pretty normal, Lu Yang said truthfully. They were cultured enough to not kill you on the spot. This is the great horror you mentioned. Dao Yaoye asked. Shang Zongtian scratched his head, not understanding their reaction. That's right, encountering the descendants of the tomb owner while tomb raiding. Is there anything more terrifying? And then they beat me up until my cultivation plummeted from apex chi training to intermediate chi training. I was thrown into jail and the authorities forced me to compensate for everything I had stolen in the past. After 10 years in prison, I decided to quit once and for all, turn over a new leaf, and not touch these troubles again. To be honest, I have no face to meet my peers in the trade. Shang Zongtian's earnestness left both of them at a loss for words. After personally burying Steward Zhang's skinless corpse, Shang Zongtian invited Lu Yang and Dao Yaoye to stay another night before leaving, but Dao Yaoye rejected him. If not for luring the painted skin ghost out, Dao Yaoye wouldn't have chosen to stay the night. Traveling at night posed no difficulty for the two Foundation establishment cultivators. Before leaving, Lu Yang found Shang Yuan and patted the parrot's head. If Typing Village hadn't mistaken the parrot for a demon beast, they wouldn't have had the chance to come to the Shang family and deal with the painted skin ghost. This parrot is a good one. Who knows, it might really be a demon beast. Take good care of it. Shang Yuan was startled and quickly asked him for the reason. In the early stages, a demon beast's strength is very ambiguous, so it is hard to distinguish it from a wild animal. I can't tell the difference either. However, even after Little Green left your house, it didn't fly far away. Instead, it kept circling Typing Village. It also knew that your family was in danger and didn't come close. Perhaps it was a coincidence, or it could be an early sign of its spiritual intelligence awakening. It's hard to say. Lu Yang smiled and said no more. Shang Zongtian felt he hadn't been a good host. The two had saved all 12 members of the Shang family, yet all he could offer was a story about his retirement. This is a journal of my tomb raiding takeaways. If you don't mind, please take it with you. Who knows if you might find it useful someday. Shang Zongtian took out a book with blue stripes from his chest pocket and handed it to them. Lu Yang accepted it politely, and the two waved goodbye. On the way back, Lu Yang asked, "Do you want this tomb raiding takeaways journal?" Dao Yaoye shook her head. "I don't raid tombs, so what would I use it for?" Lu Yang also felt that it wasn't very useful but kept it anyway. Dao Yaoye was still brooding over the matter. "Why didn't you tell me beforehand when you placed the poison in my room? Luckily, my metamorphic celestial physique has very high resistance to all poisons. Otherwise, wouldn't I have ended up getting athlete's foot like Steward Zhang? A beautiful young girl with athlete's foot. How absurd." Lu Yang shrugged. He had naturally used the poison because he knew that it wouldn't harm Dao Yaoye. "I already told you. When? During dinner, with my eyes. So you weren't asking me to pass you the dish because you couldn't reach it. I'm not that shallow." They successfully returned to the Dao-seeking sect. Coincidentally, Meng Jingzhou had also just completed his task and was complaining to the senior male disciple who had issued it. "Junior brother Meng Jingzhou, your mission was quite simple. How did you get a complaint from the fox demon, saying you had a bad attitude and refused to cooperate?" The senior male disciple was puzzled. "It's just providing a book on dual cultivation techniques. What kind of attitude problems could there be? Senior brother, you should investigate that fox demon. There's definitely something wrong with her. You see, I was just there to provide the dual cultivation techniques, but she demanded to inspect the goods by cultivating with me to see if it was genuine." Meng Jingzhou was furious. "If not for maintaining the virginity of my pure yang constitution, I would have already cultivated together with her." It was unclear whether Meng Jingzhou was angry about having a pure yang constitution and missing out on a serendipitous encounter or angry that the fox demon underestimated his heart in seeking the Tao. Noticing the senior male disciple looking helpless, Lu Yang stepped forward to mediate. "Senior brother, we have completed our mission of dealing with the demon beast." Lu Yang went into detail about how the people of Typing Village mistook a talking parrot for a demon beast and how he and Dao Yaoye lured the painted skin ghost out before ending it. Toward the end, Lu Yang handed over the painted skin ghost's ashes to the senior male disciple. "Well done, it was your first mission and your performance was already outstanding." The senior male disciple looked at Lu Yang with newfound respect. When he assigned this mission, he thought it was very simple, not realizing that there was more to it. When he heard how Lu Yang had accurately used poison like how a doctor accurately used medicine to quickly settle the fight, he became even more impressed. Without the poison, subduing the painted skin ghost would have required much more effort, and there was even the possibility of it escaping. Most importantly, this junior brother constantly carried with him poison that causes athlete's foot. At the thought of that, the senior male disciple quietly moved a bit further away. You two completed the mission with exceeding performance. Your original contribution points are quadrupled to 120 points. Junior sister Dao Yaoye, for the support role you played during this mission, you get 90 contribution points. Dao Yaoye had no objections. Lu Yang had played a pivotal role in this mission while she was just bait. Chapter 25, The Bazaar Rewards Board. Contribution points was the currency circulating within the Dao-seeking sect. Purchasing items, eating at the dining hall, trading with fellow disciples, all of this needed contribution points. Apart from that, obtaining special prizes in the Great Mission Hall also required contribution points. One example was the most popular but unaffordable prize, the Dao-seeking sect leader one-day experience. As the name suggested, redeeming this award allowed one to become the sect leader for a day, holding meetings with the elders and handling the affairs of the sect while being addressed as sect leader by others. They would be omnipotent and enjoy the privileges of the top leader among the 5 great immortal sects. There were numerous benefits, but the downside was that it required too many contribution points. No one was able to redeem it even until now. It was said that several senior disciples wanted to pool their points and redeem it once for the thrills, but they got into an argument over who would become the sect leader. Nobody conceded, leading to an all-out brawl. In the end, all of them were carried to the Pill Cauldron Peak for treatment, attracting a crowd of onlookers. Now, these senior disciples were executing long-term missions outside and hadn't returned to the sect for a long time. Another example was the Herb King Spirit Elixir. It was described as a precious liquid specially concocted by the higher-ups in the Dao-seeking sect and one of its own kind. It could be ingested or applied externally. The effects included strengthening one's physique, enhancing one's strength, solidifying one's soul, and stabilizing one's cultivation. Although its price in contribution points was exorbitant, it remained a top seller among the senior disciples. When one was in combat, a sip of it could allow one's energy and powers to be replenished and their wounds to heal faster. Everyone who had used it sang high praises for it. Yet another example was the flying vessel accident insurance, which could be bought for just 1 contribution point. Wait, why is there an accident insurance for flying vessels? Lu Yang felt that the term didn't bode well. The senior male disciple explained it in a matter-of-fact way, that's very normal. How can there be a transportation vehicle that is 100% safe? Even the flying vessel operated by the Luodi Merchant Guild can encounter accidents like bumping into some formidable cultivator, experiencing mechanical failures, having emergency landings going wrong, and the vessel's captain demanding a pay raise. These are all very common accidents. The good thing is that there haven't been any fatalities, so there's nothing to be surprised about. After the president of the Luodi Merchant Guild realized that the flying vessel would often get into accidents, he felt that it was a risk, so he proposed to have passengers pay a small amount of money into an insurance pool. As soon as an accident with the flying vessel occurs, the Merchant Guild would take out a large sum to compensate the passengers. That way, if nothing happens to the flying vessel, the passengers would simply have forked out an insignificant amount of money, but if something really happens to the flying vessel and causes delays, the passengers can get the corresponding compensation. The Merchant Guildmaster called this insurance against risk, and insurance, for short. This was then widely promoted to other industries. Not to worry though, as Dao-seeking sect won't disappoint the disciples. We have always been generous in terms of insurance. When you joined the sect, all kinds of insurance had already been purchased for you, including the flying vessel accident insurance. The one shown on the rewards column is just for increasing the compensation amount. The senior male disciple had an expression that said, "We are a proper sect from the righteous path, different from those of the diabolic path that seek death, so all necessary insurance will be provided." Lu Yang's mouth twitched. The advancements in our cultivation world are really rapid. We even have something like insurance. In his memory from his previous life, insurance was born from maritime transport. He didn't expect that in the cultivation world, it would be born from flying vessel transport. This is too inauspicious. I'd rather buy something else. One should still be somewhat superstitious in the world of cultivation. It was as if the senior male disciple had heard Lu Yang's thoughts. However, an expert studying karma posed the question as to whether there is a causal relationship between buying insurance and actual risk. In other words, he wondered if purchasing insurance would actually increase the likelihood of incidents. The Merchant Guild denied this possibility. Even after debating for a long time, they still haven't come to an official conclusion. This topic has much room for research in the cultivation world. If your study concludes that there is indeed a causal relationship, that expert will take a liking to you. If your study concludes that there is no causal relationship, the Luodi Merchant Guild will take a liking to you. Regardless, it's a win-win situation. Lu Yang thought to himself, if the result of my study suggests that there is a causal relationship, I'm afraid the Merchant Guild will come after my life. 1 contribution point can be exchanged for 100 low-grade spirit stones. 120 low-grade spirit stones can be exchanged for 1 contribution point. Blood-drinking flying sword, 2000 contribution points. The longer it is bathed in blood, the more powerful it becomes. Looking at the description, it doesn't seem like it is a weapon of the righteous path. A senior male disciple next to him clarified, it's not a must for it to be soaked in human blood. Pig blood, cow blood, and duck blood all work. I heard that the shopkeeper selling Sichuan hotpot one in the sect went to the various mountain peaks to lodge a complaint, asking which bastard had secretly left the blood-drinking flying sword inside their duck blood. After a series of investigations, the culprit was found, and the hotpot shopkeeper punished him by making him drink a pot of chili oil soup base. That scene was really, tisk, I bet he wouldn't want to eat hotpot ever again. The senior male disciple clicked his tongue a few times. His expression turned peculiar, as if he had witnessed something unusual then. Lu Yang continued to browse. 1 bottle of fasting pills in any flavor, 1 contribution point. Ancestral barbecue secret recipe, 100 contribution points. Sword hovering array, 25 contribution points. This array can be inscribed onto a weapon, allowing it to hover behind one's back. Without the constraint of a scabbard, one can use their sword anytime. It also comes with a protective array that can guard one's sword from the elements. Lu Yang contemplated for a bit and thought that the array would be quite useful, so he happily bought it. This was a half-concealed array that congealed mid-air. When placed on the ancient sword, it evaporated like water droplets. The sword quietly hovered behind Lu Yang, making him look very cool. Whenever Lu Yang turned, the ancient sword would move together with him without the slightest delay. Good stuff. 10 buffalo strength pills. 100 contribution points, 1000 contribution points, 10,000 contribution points. The classic work of the pill concocting master, Wu Ming. After consuming the pills, one can obtain the strength of 10 buffaloes and sweep through armies of thousands. It is suitable for cultivators from the foundation establishment to the nascent soul stage. If it weren't made by that senior brother Wu Ming who concocts half pills and half poison, the price would probably have been higher. Nonetheless, from the description, this pill really seems like good stuff and has wondrous use during a fight. I can buy one to test its effects. Junior sister Dao Yaoye, I'm sorry, are you planning to use your contribution points to buy something? I was hoping to borrow 5 contribution points. I'll pay you back the next time I complete my mission. Contribution points could be transferred between individuals. The thing Dao Yaoye wanted to buy required many contribution points, so 5 contribution points didn't matter much to her. Sure. Lu Yang swiftly bought a 10 buffalo strength pill. The senior male disciple who had issued the mission gave Lu Yang a small porcelain bottle. Inside was a golden pill that would radiate under sunlight. It clearly didn't look like an ordinary item. Didn't I previously say that we should celebrate you reaching foundation establishment? Come on, let's go eat. I've reserved a table at 100 Fragrance Restaurant. I assure you that they are all what you like to eat. Meng Jingzhou laughed heartily and extended the invitation to Dao Yaoye. Junior sister Dao, would you like to come with us? Ranked second during the entrance trials, Meng Jingzhou was considered Dao Yaoye's senior brother. Although Dao Yaoye knew that Lu Yang had a fear of heights, had a mouth full of lies, and even placed poison in her room without telling her. They did after all complete a mission together. We should count as friends. Sure. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 26, The Origin of the Meng Family. There were numerous businesses within the Tao-seeking sect, offering food, drinks, and entertainment. Cultivation was not just about going into seclusion. Dull and monotonous cultivation wouldn't lead to one becoming an immortal. The necessary forms of entertainment should also be available. One example was the Sichuan hot pot they mentioned earlier, and another was the 100 Fragrance restaurant they were heading to. However, Lu Yang heard that this was not the case for the Tao-seeking sect in the past. Back then, cultivation meant purely cultivation and didn't include these miscellaneous activities that would affect one's heart to seek the Tao. Later, the old sect leader and former elders retired, and the new sect leader and 8 elders assumed their positions, bringing a transformative change to the Tao-seeking sect. They encouraged everyone to cultivate hard and play hard. In their words, if even such distractions could affect one's heart to seek the Tao, then one should forget about seeking to become an immortal. Lu Yang felt that the current culture in the Tao-seeking sect was unhealthy. Once I become a higher up in the sect, I must organize a reform. The 100 Fragrance restaurant was bustling with people. Many Tao-seeking disciples who had completed their missions or finished an arduous session of cultivation liked to gather here for a meal and share their insights regarding cultivation and their missions. Just the taste of the food alone was already better than the dining hall. Waiter, we previously reserved table 9. Serve the 3 sets of utensils and dishes as of ordered earlier. Got it, please wait a moment. Upon reaching the second floor, the aroma of the dishes from other tables wafted into their noses, greatly boosting their appetite. Lu Yang had been staring at the waiter for a long while, only retracting his gaze after the waiter disappeared at the entrance of the stairway. He realized that he couldn't tell the waiter's cultivation. Lu Yang and Dao Yaoye looked around, both curious about this place. The former had meals at Heaven's Gate Peak while the latter could cook, so they didn't have a need to come here. On the other hand, Meng Jingzhou was fairly familiar with such places. You've never come here before, right? Let me tell you, there are loads of delicious food here. There's only food you've never imagined before and no food you can't find. Check out the menu. Lu Yang looked at the menu and flipped open to the first page, quickly drawn to its contents. There were no dishes on the first page but only a prominent notice: this establishment only sells prepared dishes and not raw ingredients. We seek your understanding. The second page was the main part, listing dishes with 2 types of prices, contribution points and spirit stones. Steamed lightning tribulation liquid. Essence left behind during a cultivator's lightning tribulation, greatly beneficial for becoming enlightened with the Tao of thunder and lightning. Braised ice abyss giant elephant in soy sauce. The ice abyss giant elephant lives in the frigid far north. They are the dominant species in the extreme north. An adult can crush glaciers with a single foot and remain standing upright against avalanches. Tomato and egg stir fry. Our shop offers various types of eggs including ordinary chicken eggs, 8 treasure chicken eggs, and golden great pung bird eggs. Noticing the prices, Lu Yang couldn't help but click his tongue. These items were clearly not meant for foundation establishment cultivators like them. Besides, they also couldn't afford them. However, there were things he could afford, such as stir-fried fasting pills. Dao Yaoye saw Lu Yang's furrowed brow and thought he was shocked by the prices. She couldn't help but ask with a smile, "What's wrong? Did you come across some problem?" Look, the meaning of fasting is to consume the spirit qi of heaven and earth instead of eating meals. Taking fasting pills allows one to fast. Updat. D. Father. M. Freewebville. Com. That's right. Dao Yaoye nodded. Then do you think that eating stir-fried fasting pills counts as eating or fasting? Dao Yaoye and Meng Jingzhou were both stunned. At first, they thought that the question was nonsensical, but upon further contemplation, they found it oddly profound. The 3 called the waiter over and asked if he knew the answer. The waiter was also stumped. Despite working here for such a long period of time, it was his first time encountering a customer asking such a question. Is it because I took too long to serve them? The prices here aren't low. Do you have enough contribution points? Lu Yang didn't dwell on the question about the fasting pills. Instead, he was worried whether they had sufficient money for the food. Meng Jingzhou had only completed 3 missions, so he couldn't have earned that many contribution points. It also feels like it's in Meng Jingzhou's character to invite me and Dao Yaoye to a big meal only to end up washing dishes to make up for the bill. What contribution points? Of course, we're using spirit stones, Meng Jingzhou said in the tone of a wealthy person. Dao Yaoye gave Lu Yang a slightly surprised look, wondering why he would worry about the Meng family lacking money. Haven't you heard of the Meng family? Lu Yang was baffled. Is Meng Jingzhou's Meng family very famous? The central continent is so vast that cultivators can spend all their lives exploring it and still not be done. There are multiple families and clans with the surname Meng. How would I know which one Meng Jingzhou is from? He had known Meng Jingzhou for a while now, but he had never heard him talk about his family. When Meng Jingzhou came to the Dao-seeking sect for the entrance trials, not even a single senior member from his family accompanied him. Lu Yang had thought that Meng Jingzhou's family had waned and needed Meng Jingzhou who had a single spirit root to restore the family. The most famous one. Lu Yang's pupils contracted. He now knew which Meng family Meng Jingzhou belonged to. There were many Meng families, but the most famous one was the Meng family of the capital city. The Meng family of the imperial city that once fought alongside the ancestor of Emperor Sha and established the Great Sha dynasty. Lu Yang was truly shocked. The Meng family of the imperial city had a significant background. 100,000 years ago, when the world was in turmoil, it was often said that heroes emerged in turbulent times. The ancestors of the Meng family and Emperor Sha led an uprising, fighting across the land for dominion, giving birth to a legendary story that was widely praised. Even until now, the story was still popular among storytellers in teahouses and on opera stages. 100,000 years ago, the previous dynasty was beset by internal strife and external threats, culminating in its fall and the start of a turbulent era. Demons and sea beasts left their territories, desiring to obtain a slice of the prime land that was the central continent. The ancestor of the Meng family rose from their ancestral land in the east, waging wars across countless li. The demon beasts fleeing from slaughter escaped back to the demon region, the sea beasts went back to hiding in the eastern sea, and traitorous officials and bandit heroes bowed their heads to them. The Meng family's ancestor led the army for 1,000 years, conquering half of the central continent, becoming one of the 2 hegemons of the land. The other hegemon was the ancestor of Emperor Sha, who had conquered the other half of the territory. Emperor Sha's ancestor had also driven away barbaric tribes and demon beasts, playing a part in ending the turbulent era. Each of them governed half the land, and they both made similar meritorious achievements. At the time, people thought that the 2 hegemons would either rule each half of the central continent or start an all-out war for dominance. Thus, various strategists began to calculate which side had a bigger advantage and how the other weaker party could overcome the difference in strength. What the people didn't expect was that both the Meng families and Emperor Sha's ancestors felt that the continent had already suffered 1,000 years of chaos. People were in a miserable plight, and blood flowed like rivers. It was a living hell. If the war continued, who knew how many more years of turmoil there would be and how many more would die? They fought not for the imperial throne but to return peace to the world. As such, the Meng families and Emperor Sha's ancestors abandoned their armies and fought a decisive battle as cultivators in the expansive starry sky. During that battle, the heavens and earth almost collapsed, the sun and the moon lost their brilliance, and massive stars fell. In the end, Emperor Sha's ancestor gained a slight edge and became the final victor. The Meng family's ancestor accepted the defeat and conceded. At that time, Emperor Sha's ancestor publicly declared that as long as Great Sha existed, the Meng family would never perish. And so it was. After the Great Sha dynasty was established, the Meng family settled in the capital city and was never oppressed. Chapter 27. Cultivation Breakthrough in 100 Fragrance Restaurant. The imperial family and the Meng family had a close relationship and were often related through marriage. There was no lack of geniuses from the Meng family. Every time people thought that the Meng family had depleted their assets and foundation with their descendants unable to support the clan, a genius would emerge from nowhere and take on the mantle of continuing the Meng family's legendary story. Therefore, there were rumors that the Meng family had linked its destiny with the Great Sha dynasty. As long as the Great Sha dynasty remained standing, the Meng family would never perish. You exaggerate, Meng Jingzhou laughed. He humbly added, "I didn't expect you to have guessed that I am precisely the genius from the Meng family that emerged out of nowhere." No, we don't think that you're a genius, Lu Yang spoke the truth. If the improper Meng Jingzhou were to take over the reins of the Meng family, that would mark the end of their legendary story. Speaking of genius, it's more like it for me, Lu Yang, the genius, to bear the duty of leading the Dao-seeking sect in the future. The two tooted their own horns while playing down the other party, completely forgetting that Dao Yaoye was right next to them. With her metamorphic celestial physique, she was more of a genius than a single spirit root and a sword spirit root. Fortunately, the two didn't dwell on this topic for too long. An imposing and wild aura fanned out downstairs, sweeping through the entire 100 Fragrance restaurant. If the 100 Fragrance restaurant wasn't this sturdy, one whole section of it could have collapsed. The trio felt as if they had been struck on the head with a heavy hammer. Their minds went blank, and they could feel a large hand gripping their internal organs and squeezing the life out of them. No words could describe the immense pain they were experiencing. The people nearby had cultivation that was minimally at the golden core stage, so they were in a better state than the trio, though not by much. Someone broke through to the nascent soul stage. A nascent soul senior female disciple exclaimed. She hadn't been affected. Upon further rumination, she could sense the wild intent from the aura waves. The dishes in the 100 Fragrance restaurant were not just delicious. One dish could let one's cultivation increase or let a cultivation technique circulate longer. If the dishes were combined well, they could stimulate one another's effects, resulting in an overall better efficacy. I've long heard that just a meal at the 100 Fragrance restaurant can let one break through to the next major cultivation stage. I thought it was just a rumor, but I've now seen it in action. I wonder which junior brother or sister is so lucky to have broken through here. When most people broke through, they would be in seclusion and protected, desiring silence and tranquility. However, the 100 Fragrance restaurant was the total opposite. It was noisy and bustling with people, and that could meddle with one's frame of mind, so it was not conducive to a breakthrough. If someone could break through even in such an environment, it only showed how beneficial the 100 Fragrance restaurant was for increasing one's cultivation. The waiter snapped his fingers, and the oppressive pressure instantly disappeared. Everyone caught their breaths and looked at the waiter in astonishment. To them, the waiter appeared to be at the golden core stage, but the casual move he displayed clearly exceeded that of a golden core cultivator. The waiter had feigned his cultivation stage. Someone whispered to their companion, "I heard the elders mention that he was already the waiter here at the 100 Fragrance restaurant when it first opened 1,000 years ago. Even after 1,000 years have passed, he is still a waiter here and his appearance hasn't changed the slightest bit." Although it was fairly normal for cultivators to maintain their looks, it was still rare for someone to not change their appearance for 1,000 years. The waiter didn't seem to have heard them whispering, and his expression was apologetic. "I'm sorry, perhaps a customer got too excited when breaking through and forgot to restrain their aura. We seek your kind understanding." A senior male disciple who had just reached the golden core stage mused over the breakthrough aura waves from just now, his eyes lighting up. This aura wave contains a trace of wildness like the ancient dragon tribe has just appeared. It should be a physique cultivator who has broken through. Let us quickly comprehend this aura wave. Maybe it'll be useful for improving our physiques. Absolutely. This is a fortuitous opportunity for us. We should seize it. His companions concurred and began sitting in a meditative position. The five of them slightly levitated into the air. Their eyes were closed, and they kept silent. As a cool breeze blew in from all directions, they felt extremely comfortable. Even if one wasn't a physique cultivator, they still valued the strength of their physique. If their power was sufficient but their body couldn't keep up, they could easily be ambushed by others and killed in one move. If the other party insisted on engaging in close combat, they would die as soon as the enemy got close. Hence, the Dao-seeking sect placed much importance on their disciples' physique. The ancient dragon tribe was one of the supreme clans in the demon region, renowned for their abilities to summon the wind and rain and their invincible body. If one could comprehend even a tinge of the ancient dragon's aura, it would be highly beneficial for the physical body. If they went a step further and comprehended even just half a move of the dragon tribe's remarkable powers, it would be a tremendous fortuitous opportunity. It was uncommon to see 5 golden core cultivators seated around piping hot dishes without eating them but instead sitting in a meditative position. Lu Yang found such sensitivity to fortuitous opportunities very admirable. Dao Yaoye proposed, "Why don't we also take the chance to comprehend?" Lu Yang was surprised. "You can feel the ancient dragon aura the senior brothers mentioned. There's no harm in trying." Just as the trio was considering whether they should also meditate and try to comprehend the wild aura of the ancient dragon tribe, the sound of hurried footsteps came from the stairway. A wild boar with a green face and tusks appeared, its eyes filled with panic and anger. The crowd felt a strong sense of danger. They found the demon to be ferocious and terrifying, and its cultivation surpassed most of the people present. Furthermore, the wild boar's aura waves were unsteady, as if it had just broken through. The waiter knitted his brow, a small vortex rising in his palm. Just as he contemplated whether he should intervene, there was the flash of a blade, its sharp saber-chi carrying a fiery aura. With one slash, the wild boar's head and body were separated, its head rolling far away until it stopped at Lu Yang's feet. The wild boar stared right at Lu Yang, its eyes full of unresolved grievances. What should have been a bloody scene ended up with not a single drop of blood lost. The burning saber-chi had roasted the wild boar at its severed neck, and the aroma of roasted meat assailed the nostrils. The owner of the saber finally appeared. He was an ordinary-looking chef wearing a tall hat. He even wore a specially made work apron, and one of his hands held a butcher knife. His face was fierce-looking. When he smiled, he resembled a bandit who intended to kill a hostage. Sorry, I'm sorry for startling everyone. I was just about to butcher this wild boar that is a descendant of dragons. Maybe my killing intent was too fierce, causing this beast to feel the threat to his life. He made use of this life and death opportunity to activate the trace of ancient dragon blood, breaking through to the nascent soul stage. It is our restaurant's fault. It won't happen again. Please forgive us." The chef was still carrying the butcher knife and wearing a ferocious smile, though his tone was fairly sincere. Even if the crowd didn't want to forgive him, they had to. The chef picked up the boar's head from Lu Yang's feet and dragged it back. Only then did the pressure vanish. The 5 golden core senior male disciples were a little embarrassed. It didn't seem right to either continue comprehending or stop comprehending. One person slapped the table. "Damn it, bring us a plate of slaughtered pig dish, one made from that wild boar." The price of nascent soul pork meat was outrageously expensive, let alone a wild boar with ancient dragon blood. Eating this plate of slaughtered pig dish would be enough to make them slap themselves when they wake up. Even if they would slap themselves, they were determined to eat the dish today. If they didn't eat this wild boar, their Dao hearts wouldn't be stable, and their bottled-up resentment could likely result in internal injuries. The waiter placed the towel on his shoulder, beaming as he shouted, "All right, one more slaughtered pig dish for the 5 esteemed guests." Chapter 28. I heard that there was a time you ate tofu every day. Lu Yang and the other 2 silently retracted their gaze, hoping to make themselves invisible. Judging by the 5 senior male disciples' ferocious expressions, it didn't seem like a stretch for them to silence the witnesses on impulse. "Speaking of which, do you want to guess what I've ordered for you?" "They're definitely what you like to eat," Meng Jingzhou whispered, afraid of attracting the attention of the 5 senior male disciples eating their slaughtered pig dish. Lu Yang was bewildered. How does Meng Jingzhou know what I like to eat? Dao Yaoye asked in an even softer voice, how do you know what senior brother Lu likes to eat? Meng Jingzhou gave himself a thumbs up, flashing his teeth as he smiled brightly. I specially asked big senior sister. Lu Yang instantly had a bad feeling about it. Fermented tofu is here. Freshly made tofu pudding. Tofu with shallots. Mapo tofu. 1. The waiter called out the names of the dishes as he served them. A feast of fragrant tofu dishes appeared before Lu Yang. Even someone like Dao Yaoye who wasn't interested in tofu was tempted to dig into it. Every time a dish was announced, Lu Yang's face would turn a bit paler. Meng Jingzhou was proud of himself. Big senior sister said that there was a time you ate nothing but tofu every day and for every single meal. You even mentioned some tofu heavenly sovereign in your dream, so I figured that you probably like tofu very much. You don't have to be too touched. My family members told me that if I am to treat someone to a meal, I should find out about their preferences to show my sincerity. Although I often don't agree with my family members, this is one point I agree with. I specifically came to 100 Fragrance Restaurant to order a tofu feast. Don't underestimate these dishes. They may look ordinary, but they're all actually made from the finest spirit beans and spirit herbs. Even the water used is pure water obtained by melting the ice from the extreme north. Lu Yang's face instantly turned whiter than the tofu. So this is what you found out. After the diners had a satisfactory meal, they patted their bellies as they left 100 Fragrance Restaurant. The waiter swiftly wiped the tables and chairs and cleared the dishes. As soon as he took a break, he thought about Lu Yang's question again. Did taking a fasting pill count as eating or fasting? Although the question seemed ordinary, there was more than met the eye. The more he thought about it, the more he thought it was philosophical. Looks like this cohort of newly recruited disciples includes a highly perceptive person. He'll surely achieve great things in the future. Hey, chef, I have a question for you. The waiter came to the kitchen and threw the question to the chef who had slaughtered the pig. The kitchen was scorching hot, its heat waves almost visible. If a chi training cultivator touched them in the slightest, even a lucky one would leave behind a lasting side effect of fire poison and be tormented for life. The unlucky ones could have their internal organs burned directly, leaving behind only a charred skeleton. To cook heavenly and earthly treasures and rare celestial treasures, mundane fire from the mortal world wouldn't be enough. To even burn the hair of a nascent soul wild boar, it was minimally required for the flame to be from the advanced golden core stage. Ignoring the terrifyingly high temperature in the kitchen, the waiter casually fanned with the towel on his shoulder. The high temperature suddenly vanished without a single trace and was replaced by a cooling feeling. What's going on? Learning how to butcher pigs from me? The waiter rolled his eyes. Why would I learn this kind of thing? I just thought of a philosophical question related to culinary arts, so I came to test you. The chef, who was washing the stove, was intrigued and stopped washing. He cast the brush to one side and propped up his leg. Ask away. You mentioned that you've eaten fasting pills. Does that count as eating or fasting? The chef let out a chuckle. He thought he didn't have to think to come up with an answer, but as soon as he wanted to say it out loud, he became mute. Exactly, so does it count as eating or fasting? The chef eyed the waiter suspiciously. Hold on, everyone knows about your intelligence. How could you have thought of this question with your intelligence? The waiter furiously refuted, Hey pig slaughterer. Don't look down on others. So, were you the one who thought of this question? No. The two discussed for a bit, but eventually felt that it was still too early for their brains to be pondering about such a matter. Thus, they decided to take the question to the restaurant owner. The fragrance of tea wafted about, coming together to form ancient characters that were cryptic and mysterious. As the restaurant owner heated up the teapot, placed the tea leaves, warmed the cups, and tasted the tea, every movement was fluid as water and pleasant to the eyes. The restaurant owner was a beautiful woman with an elegant demeanor. She was as fair as jade, and a faint star mark was imprinted on her forehead. She looked at the waiter and chef helplessly. Did they have too little work to do? That's why they have the time to think about such a boring question. Don't be misled by the name of fasting pills. The purpose of fasting pills is not for fasting. Instead, it is concocted from food such that it can slowly break down in the stomach, achieving the effect of not having to eat for a long time. Fasting pills are essentially food. Do you get it now? The chef mused over it. I get it. So, pill concocting masters who concoct fasting pills are in the same trade as me. The waiter laughed out loud and mocked, Don't flatter yourself. At best, you're in the same trade as the pill concocting assistant. The chef flew into a rage, raising his butcher knife at the waiter. The waiter was also not a pushover. He swung the towel on his shoulder, emitting a slight sound of metals clashing. The towel had instantly turned into a large white metal rod. Both got into a brawl with one person wielding a knife and the other holding a sword. They were like thugs, constantly dishing out all sorts of dirty tricks. The restaurant owner could only sigh. If not for their cheap wages, I would never have hired them. Gently blowing on the tea, the dense fragrance encircled the two people. With the lingering scent, they lost their bearing for a moment. By the time they regained their senses, they had already arrived downstairs. The restaurant owner's slightly annoyed and cold voice rang in their ears, Go downstairs to fight. If you damage anything, it'll be deducted from your wages. Lu Yang wasn't aware of what happened in 100 Fragrance Restaurant after they left. Finished with his celebration feast, he returned to Heaven's Gate Peak, his face pale as if he had just died for 3 days. Yunji donned an indigo long skirt and wore a plain Taoist hairpin. She was seated cross-legged and 3 feet above the ground. Currently in a meditative position, she was cultivating and resembled an otherworldly fairy. She slowly opened her eyes. They seemed to contain 1,000 worlds in them and were as resplendent as the night sky. Right after the illusion flashed by, Lu Yang rubbed his eyes and saw Yunji staring at him calmly with no sign of what he had just witnessed. An illusion? Why is your face so pale? Lu Yang complained, you're purposely asking the obvious. Meng Jingzhou heard from you that there was a time I ate tofu for every meal, so he treated me to a table of tofu to congratulate me for reaching foundation establishment. Lu Yang highly suspected that his dear big senior sister had a hand in this. Meng Jingzhou asked me what you eat most. My impression was that you ate a few vats of tofu when you were training with tofu. I simply told him the truth. What's the problem with that? Then what about the tofu heavenly sovereign? Yunji cut him off in a flat tone. You were yelling in your sleep that you had inherited a legacy, and you shouted out the name, Tofu Heavenly Sovereign. I merely passed on what you said. Lu Yang stared at Yunji's innocent eyes that were free of desires. I give up. I keep suspecting that big senior sister is playing with me, but I have no evidence. Chapter 29, The Story of the Ancient Great Era. I have already seen your mission report. You made use of your wisdom to eliminate a painted skin ghost. You did pretty well. Lu Yang was elated. Receiving praise from big senior sister is not easy. It's worth me making the trip to Typing Village. After her appraisal, Yunji thought of the implication behind the painted skin ghost, and her brow furrowed. For 100 years, following the arrival of the Great Era, various hidden factions are getting restless, and monsters are starting to roam freely. Although the Great Xia dynasty may seem peaceful, it is unknown how many calamities lie hidden within. However, the Great Xia dynasty insists on preserving its face, too proud to seek the 5 great immortal sects for help. Yunji sighed softly, her words clearly not directed at Lu Yang. Lu Yang paid particular attention to a term Yunji mentioned. The arrival of the Great Era. He had not heard of it before, and neither had he seen it in books. Yunji's voice became ethereal, as if it didn't belong to this world. 100 years ago, after the Grand Elder of the Heaven Strategy sect narrowly avoided death, with his blood polluting the clear rivers, he used his life to ask the heavens, but it was unknown what he had divined. It was said that the Heaven Strategy sect could divine all things. They paid attention to heaven's law and the natural order and believed in karma. They were the ones who questioned the Luodi Merchant Guild's insurance. Yunji continued, the Grand Elder announced to the world that the Great Era has already arrived and that the glory of the ancient cultivation world would reappear. According to past cases, accepting one single spirit root from one cohort of disciples was already considered a decent outcome. However, for your batch, we have someone from the ancient barbarian tribe, 3 single spirit roots, and a metamorphic celestial physique which is even more rare than a single spirit root. I heard from others that the other sects have also recruited a number of single spirit root geniuses in the past 100 years. From these signs, we can get a glimpse of one corner of the ancient Great Era. A rare, almost indiscernible smile appeared at the corner of Yunji's mouth, seemingly mocking. Although the ancient Great Era is said to be a period of glory, it was in fact in extreme chaos. Various factions were intertwined, the demons, devils and monsters schemed against one another, and human hearts were unfathomable with their life and death left up to fate. Countless innocent people died before any formidable cultivator appeared. The peace and stability then definitely can't be compared to now. Lu Yang found Yunji's smile to be very cold. He had come across descriptions of the ancient Great Era in books. It was a survival of the strongest. The victors would reign supreme, and there was no distinction between good and evil. Humans were also only one of the many powerful forces then, a far cry from their current hegemon status on the continent today. Demons and devils emerged, intense battles clashed ceaselessly, and prodigies roamed the world, using their blood and bone to forge their fame. They were swift and decisive in slaughter, and countless cultivation experts became legends admired by millions in the process. This was a goal unattainable for many cultivators in their lifetime. Such depictions stirred cultivators' hearts, and they wished they could transmigrate to that era to showcase their talents. It was only in such turbulent times that various heroes had the chance to stand out. However, judging by Yunji's expression, Lu Yang realized that the ancient Great Era might have been a good thing for prodigies, but it was hell for ordinary people. Their lives were fleeting, alive in one moment and dead in another. Just a normal conflict between those from the upper echelons, and one's own clan members might be enslaved and imprisoned. There was no stability to speak of. The books painted a magnificent ancient Great Era because the author was a high-level cultivator, so he yearned for those times. If it were from an ordinary person's perspective, it would have been an entirely different picture. It dawned upon Lu Yang that ever since becoming a cultivator, he had seemed to forget that he was once immortal. This is not the way. Yunji didn't discuss this topic further, finding it too early for Lu Yang. What else did you want to ask? Well, big senior sister, do you have spells for traveling quickly? Of course, I do. But what do you need this kind of spell for? The Tao-seeking sect and the Luodi Merchant Guild have an agreement. When our disciples travel out, the Luodi Merchant Guild will cover all their travel and accommodation expenses and record it under our sect. Lu Yang doesn't even need to fork out spirit stones for riding the flying vessel. What use is there for him to learn a spell for traveling quickly? Lu Yang scratched his head, revealing an embarrassed expression. Nothing much, I just want to learn and help our sect save money. Yunji didn't suspect anything. Since you have this kind intention, as your senior sister, I shouldn't turn you down. You've just reached foundation establishment, so there aren't many spells you can use. Lu Yang sheepishly rubbed his hands. Anything that works will do. I've witnessed your journey in cultivation for the past year, and you live up to the name of a sword spirit root. I have a flying sword technique here. It can let you step on a flying sword and travel across the world. I also have a repositioning technique. It trains your spiritual consciousness, making it powerful enough to shift your body. You can fly as you wish, but it's not as fast as the flying sword technique. Its advantage is that it conserves our energy, and honing your spiritual consciousness can be beneficial for your battles in the future. Transformation techniques are also an option. After you get the grasp of it, you can transform into a bird and soar in the skies freely. Little junior brother, which one would you like? Yunji listed out a few spells for Lu Yang to choose. This content is taken from F.E.E. Webnov. L.co?? Quote. Are there spells that don't involve flying? Yunji looked at Lu Yang's reddened face with an amused look. Oh, why do you want to learn a traveling acceleration spell that doesn't require flying? Lu Yang stammered but couldn't form a proper word. Yunji didn't press further. There is also a spell that doesn't require flying. However, this spell requires immense comprehension of the Tao and has a high requirements for one's magic power. It's a bit too early for you to learn it now. No worries, I can give it a try first. It's fine if it doesn't work out. The name of this spell is Shrinking Earth 2 inches. This is an inner cultivation method and mantra. Once you've memorized it, I'll teach it to you officially. Yunji raised her hand, casually tearing open a space. She took out a golden piece of paper that had delicate and pretty characters written neatly on it. Lu Yang gingerly took the golden paper. This thing looks incredibly expensive. I mustn't accidentally tear it. After Lu Yang left, Yunji closed her eyes and continued cultivating. A gust of frigid wind blew by, and an old grudgeful voice streamed into her ears. It was capable of sending chills down one's spine and making them feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. My dear disciple, how much longer do you plan to imprison your Shifu? The voice sounded like it had come from the depths of hell, causing one's hair to stand on ends. I haven't taught you much, but it's not easy for you to have obtained such achievements in your cultivation. Your Shifu is proud of you. The saying goes that, a teacher for a day is a father for life. You can't disregard the gratitude for your Shifu's teachings and imprison me here. The Tao-seeking sect has been without a sect leader for 10 years. By acting on my behalf as the sect leader, aren't you afraid of rumors and that it would ruin your illustrious image as big senior sister? You even accepted a disciple in my stead. Since he's a sword Tao genius, I'll leave it be. But at the very least, you should let me out so that I can meet that disciple of mine. You have the real person here, yet you only let him bow at my portrait. Wouldn't that be laughable if word gets out? The voice contained a kind of magical power that seemed to enchant one's heart, making one subconsciously want to believe the voice and do as it said. Yunji continued concentrating on her cultivation, turning a deaf ear to the voice. Seeing that Yunji was unmoved, the old voice turned into a long sigh. It completely vanished, as if it had never appeared. Nothing changed for Yunji as she continued sitting in a meditative position. Chapter 30, Shrinking Earth to Inches. 3 days later, Lu Yang was clad in a fit outfit. He stood ramrod straight with a jubilant smile on his face from finally memorizing the contents of the golden paper. Recite it once for me. An existence from 1,000 li instantly appears right before one's eyes, it can be returned to normal. Lu Yang recited it fluently from memory. Yunji nodded. The mantra was awkward to chant, and every seemingly subtle word held profound underlying meaning. Reciting it would deplete a tremendous amount of mental energy. The fact that Lu Yang could recite so much was evidence enough that he had worked hard. This mantra is a preamble. In the initial phases, when you're still not used to the spell, you can recite it inside your mind, and it can help you execute the spell successfully. When you become familiar with Shrinking Earth to Inches, this mantra will no longer be needed. Shrinking Earth to Inches is categorized as a spatial spell. You're still early in your cultivation, but you're Shifu's disciple after all. When Shifu was at your cultivation, he learned this spell. Perhaps you can do it too. The most important thing about cultivating spatial spells is safety. As soon as there is a wrong distortion and shift in space, you may end up with your head and body separate or be severed at the waist. As such, the cultivation world has an unspoken rule. When one cultivates spatial spells, there must be a senior well-versed in spatial cultivation to guide them by the side. Yunji was rarely solemn, so Lu Yang followed suit and listened intently to her. The principle of the spell Shrinking Earth to Inches is to shrink the earth until it is as small as 1 square inch. With that, the spellcaster can easily step over it, traveling across limitless distances and arriving at a totally different place. The more familiar one becomes with the spell, the area of landmass that can be shrunk becomes bigger, and the distance they can cross also becomes farther. When you master it, nothing can stop your footsteps no matter how huge the central continent is. What you need to pay attention to is that cultivating spells requires comprehension. You've never been exposed to spatial spells. You should be mentally prepared that the outcome can go both ways. A cultivator should remain calm in all situations and avoid extreme joy and sorrow. Yunji imparted her cultivation experiences to Lu Yang. Lu Yang nodded. Big senior sister is indeed the most qualified to say this. I've never seen her lose control of her emotions. This is one of my flaws. At the start, when Lu Yang saw that Yunji had always maintained the same expression, he thought that it was because she had no emotions. However, after spending time with her, he realized that she did have varying emotions. It was just that the fluctuations were too subtle. Lu Yang could now roughly guess Yunji's mood based on the minute changes in her expression. For example, now, I can't tell. I'll demonstrate it for you once. Yunji didn't know what Lu Yang was thinking about. She threw a red flag to the summit of the mountain opposite them. Before Lu Yang could see clearly, she had already taken a step gracefully, suddenly disappearing and suddenly appearing back again, this time with the red flag in her hand. Just like this. After you succeed, practice a few more times and you'll become as proficient as I am. Lu Yang stood rooted to the spot. He blinked his eyes. And blinked his eyes again. What just happened? In Lu Yang's eyes, Yunji seemed to have thrown the red flag and taken it back directly. He couldn't even see if the red flag had landed on the opposite mountaintop. There were no traces of a spell being used. Yunji frowned, which was a rare sight. Back when Shifu taught me, he also demonstrated it like this. I learned it in one go. Worried that Lu Yang might not have understood, she demonstrated it once more. She threw the flag, stepped forward, and came back. It was as fluid as the water muddling Lu Yang's brain. Lu Yang. As expected, there are also times when big senior sister isn't reliable. I still have to rely on myself to learn things like this. Lu Yang met Yunji's eyes. This time, he could discern her mood. She hopes to see me succeed. But big senior sister, you have to know that no one can learn anything based on your teaching methods. Lu Yang sighed. I can't count on big senior sister anymore. I should cast the spell based on my understanding of shrinking earth to inches. An existence from 1,000 li instantly appears right before one's eyes, returning to normal when left alone. Lu Yang's eyes were tightly shut. He chanted and made finger gestures as he performed the spell. Shrinking earth to inches. Lu Yang yelled. Instantly, his body vanished, and his surroundings changed. It became pitch black, as if he had landed in an alternate space. Lu Yang was elated. I actually succeeded on the first try. I'm indeed a genius. Lu Yang had heard from Yunji that the principles of shrinking earth to inches were distorting space. The spellcaster walked in an alternate space which was a straight line. Through this alternate space, one could reach their destination in the shortest possible time. Just as Lu Yang wanted to smile, he realized that the surrounding black matter began pouring into his mouth. He also got trapped by the black matter, unable to move his hands and legs. Furthermore, there seemed to be no air inside this alternate space, making his breathing laborious. After a short moment of composed rumination, he realized one thing: he had shrunk into the earth. Lu Yang now had good news and bad news. The good news was that he had learned half of shrinking earth to inches, shrinking earth. The bad news was that he had only learned half of it. Still standing on the ground surface, Yunji didn't know what to say. She witnessed the whole process of Lu Yang casting the spell and then shrinking into the earth, learning the earth escape technique. How did a spatial spell change to an elemental spell? As the big senior sister of the Tao-seeking sect and the most senior disciple of the sect leader, her cultivation and talent were the best among all disciples. She could casually scribe cultivation techniques and learn spells by just observing. Her comprehension was also extraordinary and rare even throughout history. Any genius before her would probably lose their radiance and might even find her terrifying. However, even she could not understand Lu Yang's spellcasting principle. These are clearly two unrelated spell types. With a muffled pop, Lu Yang performed shrinking earth to inches again. His head popped out of the ground like a mole, giving people the urge to hit him with a hammer or step on him. He coughed, trying to resolve the awkwardness. However, no matter how thick-skinned Lu Yang was, he still couldn't withstand such an awkward situation. Yunji pulled Lu Yang out from the earth without any expression, shaking off a pile of mud and dirt along with it. It was just like pulling up a radish. That was just an accident. I'll try again. Lu Yang felt like he was close to finding the key trick. An existence from 1,000 li instantly appears right before one's eyes, returning to normal when left alone. Lu Yang made finger gestures as he chanted faster than before. Shrinking earth to inches. Lu Yang hollered. Something took effect again. Although Yunji was tall, she was still half a head shorter than Lu Yang. Usually, Lu Yang could see the top of Yunji's head, but it was different now. Yunji's body gradually became taller. Starting from looking down at her, Lu Yang looked straight at her, then looked up at her, and finally ended up straining his neck to look up. With his current angle, he couldn't even see the whole of Yunji's face. Yunji looked like a titan holding up the sky, her head touching the heavens and her feet stepping on the earth. Wait, it's me who got smaller. Lu Yang shrieked. When he saw the stone that was half a person's height, he realized the source of the problem. The 3-inch Lu Yang jumped around on the ground, his voice much softer than normal. He had learned a new spell, to inches. Lu Yang's talent in spells could also be described as terrifying. The genius, Yunji, had only learned one spell, shrinking earth to inches, when she was learning the spell. However, Lu Yang learned 2 spells instead, shrinking earth into inches. Yunji squatted down to observe Lu Yang. Her brow was knitted, seemingly because she still couldn't figure out which step had gone wrong. Check out our playlist for more amazing novels. Continue. Chapter 31. Learning for Practical Application. Yunji grabbed Lu Yang's collar with 2 fingers and shook him. However, she still couldn't understand the underlying reason, so she put him back. Lu Yang was similarly bewildered. This doesn't make sense. I followed Big Senior Sister's mantra and method, but why did it become 2 completely different spells when I cast it? I'll demonstrate it to you again. Yunji was a responsible teacher. Although her teaching skills were average, her patience made up for it. She took out an hourglass and put it on the ground. Then she touched Lu Yang's shoulder, and the both of them leapt through space and time. Lu Yang's vision blurred for a moment before he found himself in a strange space with colorful rays of light flowing like a stream on both sides. He subconsciously reached out to touch the flowing light, but Yunji stopped him. That's a phenomenon from time distortion. Even divine transfiguration cultivators would be shredded into smithereens and have their soul disintegrated if they touch this light, let alone you. Her words frightened Lu Yang so much that he instantly retracted his hand. The two stepped out of the space and saw a giant white snake coiling around a mountain. It was devouring the sun and the moon, cultivating with the essence of heaven and earth. Something flickered in its eyes, and the two of them happened to land inside the giant snake's mouth and enter its stomach. Before the gastric acid was about to drip onto them, Yunji took another step and they arrived at another strange space. Following Yunji, Lu Yang witnessed all kinds of bizarre and gaudy scenes, oceans of lava, cultivators going through lightning tribulations, and silent swordsmen carrying their wide sabers. He had never seen or heard of such places, so it was hard to imagine that such wondrous people and sights still existed in the world. Finally, the two were back at their starting point. Lu Yang was panting and still hadn't recovered from his shock. All the places I took you to just now are within the Tao-seeking sect. You can head there by yourself when you have the chance in the future. The Tao-seeking sect was too expansive, anywhere apart from the 9 core mountain peaks were still unknown to Lu Yang. Why don't you try casting the spell again? Yunji felt that things might be different this time. Under Yunji's earnest gaze, Lu Yang braced himself as he cast the spell again. After a day of training, Lu Yang finally learned how to sense the underground environment and how he could avoid getting stepped on after shrinking himself. He didn't succeed a single time for shrinking Earth to inches, but he succeeded every single time for both shrinking Earth and to inches. In fact, he became more proficient with every attempt. In the end, he didn't even need the mantra. As if he had immersed himself in this Tao for years, he could now cast the spell with just a thought. Lu Yang's original intention in learning shrinking Earth to inches was for traveling quickly. However, he had instead mastered shrinking Earth to travel faster, so it could somewhat be considered to be in line with his initial goal. The only issue was that he didn't know what to make of his method, and its speed was also slower. Watching Lu Yang having plenty of fun changing his size at will and darting in and out of the earth, Yunji casually asked, "Little junior brother, I heard that you had a hard time finding missions in the Great Mission Hall." "That's right, many missions can only be completed with the Golden Core stage and above, so there are very few missions suitable for me." Lu Yang was considering going and camping in the Great Mission Hall for a few days to see if he could find a suitable mission. It just so happens that a few days ago, I had a meeting with the elders, and someone mentioned that there was a slight problem at the herb garden. They posted the mission in the Great Mission Hall, but no one accepted it. You seem like a suitable candidate. Why don't you go to the herb garden and take a look? Lu Yang knew that ever since his master went into seclusion, it was Yunji who presided at the meetings on his behalf. What mission is it? Lu Yang was puzzled. I don't have any particularly outstanding strength. What kind of mission could be suitable for me? Besides, I know nothing about the herb garden. I haven't even finished learning how to distinguish herbs. You'll know when you're there. Yunji didn't give an answer to his question. From Lu Yang's current observations, the Tao-seeking sect was like a miniature version of the cultivation world. Without leaving the sect, one could find people to concoct pills, craft artifacts, and set up arrays. They were self-sufficient most of the time. Concocting pills required spirit herbs. The Tao-seeking sect had an extremely high demand for pill concoction, but they couldn't keep relying on external procurement. To mitigate this issue of spirit herb supply, the sect opened up a massive patch of land for a herb garden, meant for planting medicinal herbs. The Great Mission Hall also posted missions about helping with growing the herbs in the herb garden. Growing herbs required professional knowledge, something Lu Yang completely lacked. Up until now, he was still ignorant of the herbs and spirit meat he ate every day, much less knowledge on cultivating herbs. From a distance, Lu Yang could already smell the fragrance from the herb garden. Unlike the fragrance from the Pill Cauldron Peak, which had a probability of being poisonous, the smell here was the purest medicinal fragrance. Inhaling it for prolonged periods of time could let one live longer and remain healthy. An old man lay at the entrance of the herb garden. He was leisurely napping on the rocking chair with a cattail leaf fan covering his face. Mister, is this the herb garden? The old grandpa glanced at Lu Yang with half-hooded eyes. Who are you? Lu Yang. I didn't ask for your name. I was asking for your identity. Fourth disciple of the sect leader and big senior sister Yunji's little junior brother. The old grandpa didn't give much of a reaction when he heard the first part. The sect leader. That old fellow has already disappeared for 10 years. Who cares about him? He should retire and stop occupying the position. How can he make Yunji do all the work for him? However, he immediately came to a realization when he heard the latter part. The sect leader's disciple means that he is Yunji's little junior brother. The old grandpa immediately sprung up, even more agile than Lu Yang. This was normal in the cultivation world. One couldn't judge the other party's skills and age just by their outer appearance. When an old man and a child stood together, you could never be sure who the grandfather was and who the grandson was. No one advocated for respecting the elderly and doting on the young, for the elderly and child could actually be more of a fighter than you were. So it was Yunji who recommended you. You should have said that earlier. The grandpa hooked his arm around Lu Yang's shoulder as if they were brothers. We are all part of the Tao-seeking sect. You can just call me Old Ba. I call the shots for this herb garden. Lu Yang suspected that Grandpa Ba was taking advantage of him, but he had no evidence. What did Yunji ask you to do? Pick herbs. How many years old do you need the herbs to be, 1,000 or 2,000? Seeing Grandpa Ba like this, Lu Yang couldn't help but be reminded of the meal Yunji made for him. Don't tell me they're all 1 or 2,000-year-old herbs picked from the herb garden. 1,000-year-old herbs are not like common vegetables. They're precious to the Tao-seeking sect. No way, no way. Big senior sister is a fairly frugal person, she couldn't possibly waste these medicinal ingredients on me. Lu Yang replied politely. Big senior sister said that the herb garden posted a mission a few days ago, but no one accepted it. What mission is it? Grandpa Ba immediately knew what he was referring to. Do you know how to cultivate herbs? Not at all, Lu Yang answered honestly. I'll explain it to you simply then. Cultivating herbs comprises rather complicated steps. One of them is loosening the soil. This is so that the roots of the herbs can better absorb the spirit energy from the soil and exchange it with the spirit energy in the air. This task of loosening the soil has always been done by a silver-ringed monarch earthworm husband and wife. However, they recently have some family issues, and there's no one doing the work, so I posted a mission to have the herb garden's soil loosened. This requires one of the elemental spells, Earth Escape Technique. Although there are many who know this technique, they all find it too troublesome and are unwilling to accept the task. Fortunately, Yunji sent you here. So what I need to do is mimic an earthworm and burrow into the soil to loosen the soil for the herb garden. Lu Yang. I suspect that big senior sister is playing with me, but I still have no evidence. Chapter 32, Ginseng Doll. Objectively speaking, burrowing into the earth in the herb garden was a good idea. While practicing the technique of shrinking earth, he could also put his herbal knowledge to practical use and make up for his lack of knowledge, essentially killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Big senior sister is doing this for my sake. Big senior sister is doing this for my sake. Big senior sister is doing this for my sake. Lu Yang hypnotized himself into thinking that Yunji had his best interests at heart, so he should sincerely accept this mission of burrowing into the ground as a replacement for the earthworms. Suddenly, he remembered something. Earthworms are supposed to be hermaphrodites. Why would earthworms have husband and wife? Grandpa Ba explained, the earthworms in the mortal world are indeed hermaphrodites, but that's a trait of low-level beings. Oh, I don't mean that in a derogatory way. Earthworms that are sentient can transform to have genders, especially the silver-ringed monarch earthworms. They are the king among earthworms and can exert bloodline suppression on all other earthworms. I understand. Please continue. Grandpa Ba continued, originally, with the silver-ringed monarch earthworm couple around, there was no problem with loosening the soil. It's my fault for shooting my mouth off that day. I asked the wife, I heard that earthworms can still live after splitting into 2. If you also split into 2, wouldn't you be able to work for 1 day and rest the next day by alternating with your new self? She was tempted by what I said, and she split herself up on the spot, turning into 2 individuals. They were as identical as twin sisters. No, it was like a clone splitting technique. I watched right as one person turned into two people, and I couldn't identify the original. Fortunately, they themselves could tell. When the husband returned, he was stumped to see two wives. The two of them asked the husband who he liked. The husband was a straightforward person, so he directly said that he liked the two beautiful sisters. A family conflict erupted, and the three of them played out a soap drama of love and hate entanglements, so they're not in the mood to work until now. Grandpa Ba's tone was full of reproach. Lu Yang. Dang, that's crazy. What exactly should I do? Lu Yang quickly regained his composure and gradually adapted his mindset to that of a cultivator. They're all small matters. Grandpa Ba stroked his white beard and smiled. You can go in first, someone will guide you. But let me remind you, you're entering the herb garden to loosen the soil. If you dare to secretly pick herbs, the law enforcement peak will definitely hold you responsible. The law enforcement peak, managed by First Elder, was strict and impartial. Lu Yang thanked Grandpa Ba and walked into the herb garden. Upon entering, the medicinal fragrance was 10 times stronger than before. The smell can't possibly differ so much in just a few steps. Lu Yang immediately realized that although it seemed that Grandpa Ba was the only one guarding the herb garden, there was actually an entire array protecting the herb garden and preventing outsiders from entering. This array kept the herb garden's aura waves locked in, but the medicinal fragrance was so intense that even the large array couldn't contain all of it, and a bit of it had leaked out. Just this slight bit was already sufficient to extend the lifespan of mortals. One could only imagine what other miraculous effects the medicinal fragrance inside the herb garden could provide. Apart from the medicinal scent, the most striking aspect was the spirit energy. It was too thick. Lu Yang suspected that it was not dew but water droplets condensed from spirit energy on the leaves. Every drop would be roughly worth one low-grade spirit stone. Wherever Lu Yang's eyes went, it would be verdant and lush greenery. Manifold types of herbs that he had never heard of or smelt spread out before him. They were neatly arranged into rows and categorized into different regions based on their breeds. Lu Yang didn't even know where to look. He didn't dare to walk as he wished, afraid that he might accidentally step on some rare breed. Squatting down, he looked at several herbs before finally finding one he recognized. The herb had 3 leaves and clear veins. It appeared as if it had been formed from ice, emitting a faint coldness. Ice soul grass. I remember that this kind of flower can help those cultivating ice element techniques and increase their absorption of spirit energy. Every ice soul flower was spaced apart from one another to prevent the coldness they emanated from combining together and freezing themselves. Lu Yang's memories of his battles with the puppet were still vivid. When he was beaten into a sorry state by the puppet would use ice soul grass afterward to apply on his wound. However, he really didn't recognize the other herbs. Hey, who are you? A not-so-courteous voice called out. Lu Yang turned around but saw no one. Who's speaking? Hey, look down, the voice told him. Lu Yang lowered his head and saw a 3-inch-tall ginseng doll hopping around at his feet. It seemed to be displeased with Lu Yang for being so slow and needing it to hint to him. You're so stupid. Why didn't you know to look down? You even needed me to remind you. The ginseng doll's legs were chubby and sturdy. It ran around Lu Yang, its 2 roots acting as its arms and waving up and down. Its facial features from its body line patterns were as expressive as a human. Youngster, who are you? The ginseng doll asked in an old-fashioned manner. A ginseng that could become sentient had to be quite old. Lu Yang didn't dare to be disrespectful, so he bowed. I am Lu Yang. I accepted the mission to loosen the soil for the herb garden. So you're just someone loosening the soil. The ginseng doll heaved a sigh of relief. I thought it was those vile humans coming here to pick the herbs again. The herbs in the herb garden are all cultivated by me. Since you could come in, you must have gotten Little Ba's approval. Other than Little Ba and that she-devil, I haven't seen outsiders for a while now. The source of this CNTENT is Freeway. Novel.co. The old Grandpa Ba was simply considered a junior to the ginseng doll. To them, high cultivation was not as important. What mattered to herbs was who lived the longest. There was no one that caught the ginseng doll's eyes in the Tao-seeking sect. Lu Yang had heard about the herb garden's rules. The herbs were precious. If one wanted to get the herbs for treatment purposes, they had to ask the person guarding the garden to pick it for them. Apart from the person guarding the herb garden, no one else could enter. If not for Lu Yang's mission, he also wouldn't have been able to enter the herb garden. The ginseng doll mentioned a she-devil. Is she the other person guarding the herb garden? The ginseng doll placed its hand-like roots on its hips and complained, "Why are you humans all so tall?" Lu Yang felt that keeping his head lowered while talking was tiring, so he made use of the 2 inches technique to shrink himself into 3 inches, the same size as the ginseng doll. "Oh, youngster, you're much better than little Ba." The ginseng doll was initially shocked, but the surprise quickly turned into joy instead. It was rare for a human to be the same height as it. It was irking for it to always have to look up at humans. The ginseng doll's head and body were one entity with no neck. "From now on, in this herb garden, you can just follow my lead," the ginseng doll declared in a bold and grand manner. It used its ginseng roots to pat Lu Yang's shoulder as a form of approval. "I still have some things to attend to. You can follow me. After I'm done, I'll take you to see the other herb kings." When herbs became sentient, they would become herb kings and the most precious of herbs. Even other powerful sects might not have one. If they did obtain one, they would likely worship it as their ancestor. However, based on what the ginseng doll implied, it seemed that herb kings like it were not a rarity in the herb garden. Lu Yang clicked his tongue softly. The Tao-seeking sect's foundation is really scary. Chapter 33, Herb Garden. Lu Yang followed the ginseng doll closely, taking in the scenery of herbs from a novel perspective. The sunlight shone through the gaps between the leaves, casting spots of light on Lu Yang. After turning small, the herbs had become trees in Lu Yang's eyes. They could shield him from the sunlight and were much taller than he currently was. Soon, one human and one ginseng came across a rapid stream. As it was imbued with spirit attributes bred from nature, it was used to irrigate the herbs, and some of the water would be purified and flow back to the stream, achieving a win-win situation. "This is the river guarded by the river spirit," the ginseng doll introduced. The surrounding of the Tao-seeking sect was a stream that would sometimes be fast and sometimes slow. Its source was an endless spring. This spring carried a long history. Before the Tao-seeking sect was established, the spring received blessings from heaven and earth, developing spirit light. To non-living beings, their greatest fortuitous opportunity was to gain spiritual intelligence. This spark of spirit light was instrumental. If the spirit light came to them and they became sentient beings, it would be akin to suddenly being elevated to nature's favored child. If the spirit light dissipated into nature, it was unclear how many more years would be needed to produce that bit of spirit light again. These non-living beings drifted with the tide of the world, and one day, they might be caught up in a battle among cultivators and disintegrate, losing all hope of ever gaining spiritual intelligence. The probability of the spirit light disappearing was greater than the probability of it becoming theirs. Fortunately, a predecessor from the Tao-seeking sect passed by. They discovered this situation and cast a spell to trap this spirit light within the spring. Only then did the spring truly gain spiritual intelligence. Grateful to the Tao-seeking sect predecessor, the spring willingly guarded the Tao-seeking sect. This stream flowed throughout the whole sect, protecting the sect at its periphery and becoming one of the sources of life from within the sect. The spirit of this spring was also known as the river spirit. From an ordinary person's perspective, the river was no more than 2 long, and the flow was also slow. It would be complimenting it to even call it a stream. After turning small, this stream appeared even more exciting. A wooden plank lay across the stream as a bridge. The herb kings had likely built it here in advance. When Lu Yang crossed the stream, he didn't know whether it was an illusion, but the stream seemed to flow more rapidly. As if it's excited to see me. Lu Yang wasn't very sure. Not far away, he saw a majestic city wall constructed with limestone, each larger than his present self. Only when they got closer did he realize that it was the wall of the herb garden. The ginseng doll dug at the base of the wall a few times, revealing transparent stones that seemed to have their insides sucked away, leaving only an empty transparent glass. The ginseng doll stretched its roots, which were as nimble as tentacles, stringing the transparent stones together. Lu Yang raised his eyebrow. He kept feeling that these things looked familiar. "I remember that you humans call these things spirit stones." Realization hit Lu Yang. No wonder it looked so familiar. Aren't these spirit stones that have their spirit chi drained? But I haven't seen such high-quality ones. You like these things? Little Ba often buries these stones at the base of the wall. When the stones become empty, he'll ask me to collect them so that he can take them all away at once. Lu Yang now understood how it worked. Planting herbs requires vast amounts of spirit qi, but the spirit qi in the herb garden wasn't infinite. Thus, the Tao-seeking sect buried spirit stones in the herb garden to provide pure, concentrated spirit qi. No wonder I felt that the spirit qi in the air was absurdly rich right as I stepped inside the herb garden. It's because they're fed by spirit stones. Spirit stones used in the herb garden won't be of a low grade. It's quite possible that they're rare high-grade spirit stones. After the ginseng doll was done with stringing the spirit stones together, it walked ahead with Lu Yang following behind. As they walked, it chatted with Lu Yang. There's a great array covering the whole herb garden underneath our feet. I think it's called the Eternal Evergreen Array, and it helps our herbs grow healthily. These transparent stones are part of the array. Lu Yang had heard of the Eternal Evergreen Array. It was a top-notch array used for cultivating spirit herb, but it required an enormous amount of spirit stones yearly. By the way, I heard Little Ba mention that our sect is rather poor, struggling to keep their stomachs full just to keep us. They're like playing some Kuju 2 match where a group of people fight to the point of bleeding just to snatch a ball. Is that true? Lu Yang didn't dare to answer. This Grandpa Ba appears to be kind on the outside, but he has no qualms about lying to the herb kings. This is called illusion-shattering immortal wood, also known as the bane of the unreal. It has the ability to shatter illusions and let one see the truth. If you're caught in an illusion technique, quickly grasp this wood and you'll be able to dispel the illusion. Lu Yang followed the ginseng doll's gaze. He saw a cactus. Those are sun-exploding flowers, one of the essential ingredients for cultivating the searing sun dharma body. Other than its capabilities for cultivating dharma bodies, adding it to any fire element pills can add a bit of searing sun true essence, greatly benefiting cultivators with a fire spirit root. The best quality sun-exploding flowers are 9 turns. 9-turn sun-exploding flowers are useful even for transcendent tribulation cultivators. This area consists of 6, 7, and 8 turns sun-exploding flowers. That's the Tao Enlightenment forest over there. When its leaves are soaked in water, it has the ability to help with Tao Enlightenment, and its wood is a raw material for crafting high-grade magical treasures. I heard that the price in the outer world has shot up to the sky. Every autumn, Little Ba would pick a large batch of Tao Enlightenment leaves for all of you to consume. Lu Yang had seen many descriptions of the Tao Enlightenment tree. They comprised all kinds of flowery words, praising the tree to be an immortal species and divine tree and even claiming that the reason for the rise of humans in ancient times was partly attributed to the Tao Enlightenment tree. However, it was his first time seeing a real Tao Enlightenment tree in person. The Tao Enlightenment tree was a few dozen meters tall, but to the 3-inch Lu Yang, it looked like the sacred Janmu tree that could reach the sky in the legends. He had to raise his head so much that dizziness seized him, and his ears rang as if the Tao of the world was rumbling in his ears. I heard Little Ba say that it's best for low-ranked cultivators to not consume Tao Enlightenment leaves because their Tao heart and foundation are lacking. Giving it to them too early would be like pulling at a seedling to help it grow, ruining it due to excessive zealousness. It wouldn't be favorable for their cultivation and comprehension of the Tao in the future. This is the same concept as not using too much fertilizer when the herbs are young. As the tree ages, the Tao Enlightenment in its leaves would become better. The oldest in the Tao Enlightenment tree is even older than I am and also an herb king. You'll see it later. This is called lovesick grass, one of the key ingredients for concocting the lovesick moon pills. When the bright moon is in the sky, if 2 people separated by distance ingest these lovesick moon pills at the same time, they'll be able to cross the boundaries of time and space to speak with each other. It is said that there was a pair of lovers in ancient times. The man was born from an eminent clan and was the clan leader's son, while the woman was of a humble origin and the descendant of slaves. One day, when the man was hunting outside, he met a woman. The two fell in love at first sight and promised themselves to each other for life. Unfortunately, as the son of an eminent clan's leader, he had no freedom to choose his partner, much less marry a slave as his wife. The clan forced him to marry the daughter of another eminent clan's leader so that the relationship between both well-matched clans could get closer. However, the man refused to comply. He sneaked out on the day of his wedding and eloped with the woman. When the elders of the clan found out, they dispatched experts to kill the woman, and she died in the man's arms. Overwhelmed with grief, the man took his own life, and their blood converged to form a wild grass which had even the roots stained red. It then became known as lovesick grass. The story piqued Lu Yang's interest, and he subconsciously asked, "That's so touching. Did it really happen?" "It's fake. Someone made up this story just so that they could sell the lovesick grass for a high price. I was right there when the story was fabricated." Lu Yang. Chapter 34, Little Herb Kings. Back when I traveled across the central continent, I made quite the reputation for myself. If not for someone spreading the word about my yang-boosting efficacy, I wouldn't have been forced to come to the Tao-seeking sect to seek refuge. I would still be traveling around. The person traveling with me was also a big name among humans, called Devotee Gaiyu. When he sent me to the Tao-seeking sect, he said he would include me in his book so that people can remember me. Devotee Gaiyu was a famous traveler from the central continent. He liked adventures and wandering across places. He left his mark on the central continent, Demon region, and Buddhist kingdom, with legends of him circulating around various regions. The most up-to-date Novels are published on Father E. Webno. L.O. Legends said that he once served as a scribe in the Great Xia dynasty, meticulously chronicling the Xia emperor's romantic encounters and his many illegitimate children. In the Demon region, Devotee Gaiyu was abducted by the princess of the dragon tribe and forced into marriage. He managed to escape, but they pursued him all the way to the Buddhist kingdom for his head. In the Buddhist kingdom, he pretended to be a monk and became a con artist. Every time someone found a loophole in his logic or met a problem they couldn't solve, he would say, "Buddha says it can't be told." Later, this phrase would become widespread in the Buddhist kingdom. Devotee Gaiyu also compiled his own experiences into a book, which became fairly popular in the cultivation world. Although there were no ancient records that explicitly documented Devotee Gaiyu's cultivation, Lu Yang surmised that it shouldn't be low. If his cultivation were just a bit lower, he would probably have gotten beaten to death a long time ago. The ginseng doll was a superb teacher. It shared stories from its personal experiences, and even revealed that it had discovered the numerous herb species in the herb garden alongside Devotee Gaiyu. Lu Yang was engrossed the more he listened to it. The duo of human and ginseng arrived at a small hut built from flowers and grass. The closer they got to the small hut, the more the almost tangible vital energy emanating from within caused Lu Yang's heart to race. "Something's wrong." Lu Yang clutched his chest, his body trembling involuntarily. Thump, thump, thump. Lu Yang's heartbeat became increasingly faster. He felt as if there were countless tiny bugs flying around his ear and buzzing incessantly. Paying closer attention to the sound, his heart sank into coldness, and a chill ran down his spine. That's not the sound of tiny bugs. They're the voices of countless people speaking inside my body. Those voices are telling me that they're trapped within my body and that they want to leave. The ginseng doll was the first to notice that something was amiss with Lu Yang and hollered, "Hey hey hey, an outsider is here. All of you, quickly withdraw your vital energy." Lu Yang manipulated his cultivation technique and quelled his boiling blood. Only then did the voices gradually vanish. He fell to the ground on his knees, gasping for air. Everything that had just happened was not an illusion. There was really something inside me. What was it? The ginseng doll placed down the empty spirit stones and ran to Lu Yang while bobbing up and down. Its tone was apologetic. "Sorry about that, I didn't expect you to not have reached the nascent soul stage." Different from humans, herb kings didn't measure their cultivation stage but by their age instead. The ginseng doll couldn't tell Lu Yang's cultivation, only finding him pleasing to the eye. What was that? Lu Yang still hadn't fully recovered from his shock. He felt as if he had just returned from a tour around hell. Little boss and the she-devil's cultivation are considered too high among you humans, so I forgot about how our vital energy might affect you. It is so abundant that it can make you feel like every organ in your body has developed its own consciousness and become a separate entity. When you've reached the nascent soul stage with perfect meridians and orifices and no vulnerable interstices in your body, you will no longer be affected by our vital energy. Hearing the commotion from the ginseng doll's side, numerous 3-inch tall herbs hopped over to Lu Yang. Ginseng King, who is this person? Why is he so tiny? You call this tiny? He's clearly the same height as us. Are you calling yourself tiny too? It must be magic. Human spells are very mystical. There's nothing surprising about turning big or small. I've even seen males becoming females and humans becoming demons. This person's cultivation doesn't look like it's very high. Has he not reached the pregnant stage? What pregnant stage? Qilin King, your memory is failing. It's called the nascent soul 1 stage. He doesn't look like he's steady on his feet. Let's carry him inside the hut. The little herb kings softly discussed among themselves for a while, their buzzing noises uncomfortable for Lu Yang's ears. They first raised Lu Yang over their heads, then carried him into the small hut. The Tao Enlightenment tree stood outside, scratching its trunk, causing the leaves to rustle. Its head was too huge, so it couldn't enter the small hut. Only when Lu Yang got inside did he realize that the small hut wasn't built from flowers and grass but ancient wood. Under the vital energy of the herb kings, the ancient wood appeared to be perpetually in spring, sprouting new leaves and fresh flowers and covering its original appearance. Lu Yang was feeling much better. He slowly got up and tried to distinguish the herb kings. Guess what? I don't know a single one. Human, what's your name? A small grass with 3 tender leaves asked. Its entire body was silver, and there were specks of starlight on its leaves, as if they were the microcosm of space. I am Lu Yang. Senior, may I know who you are? Lu Yang asked politely. According to their ages, the little herb kings were not only his seniors but also the seniors of everyone in the Tao-seeking sect. It's called 3-leaf starry herb. We all call it Star King, another little herb king answered quickly. It was a multicolored flower, each of its leaves corresponding to the 5 elements. The center of the petals was divided into black and white, with a bit of white in the black part and a bit of black in the white part, forming a taiji design. It looked like a mesmerizing ink painting that could suck one's soul inside. I'm the Time Terminus flower. You can just call me Terminus King. Everyone says that I'm the most beautiful flower. I think it's because someone is jealous of my charm and is trying to bring me down by showering me with excessive compliments. As a modest herb king, I think that I'm just the world's second most beautiful flower. The Time Terminus flower chatted endlessly. Lu Yang stared at the Time Terminus flower for 2 seconds, his pupils widening with incredulity. Although he didn't know how a Time Terminus flower looked, its reputation preceded it. Time Terminus flower is that the flower that is claimed to bloom so beautifully that time would come to a standstill, but that's only when the world is about to end and living beings are plunged into devastation. Lu Yang couldn't be blamed for being so astonished. The ancient records documented that the blooming of the Time Terminus flower signaled the end of the world, meaning that the world would be completely reset. But from what I've read in the ancient books, a catastrophe of such scale has never happened before. The Time Terminus flower scratched its nectar. Someone did say that, but I remember that I bloomed during very peaceful times. Everyone was joyful and in harmony, and I didn't see any disasters. Perhaps the story of my blooming is just a rumor. Lu Yang was about to ask more when he heard another little herb king speak. Lu Yang, why did you come to the herb garden? Did Little Ba ask you to pick some herbs? A small jade green Qilin asked. It appeared as if it was an exquisite piece of work carved from fine jade, looking like it didn't belong to this world. Lu Yang was taken aback again. Qilin. A Qilin is one of the most mysterious demon beasts. It's a miracle to even find 1 or 2. They're much rarer than transcendent tribulation cultivators. Their traces can only be found through fragmented information in ancient records. But you're telling me that there's actually one in the Tao-seeking sect. The depth of Tao-seeking sect's foundation was so terrifying that it was completely beyond Lu Yang's wildest imagination. The ginseng doll explained, it's the Qilin immortality herb. Its current form is its dharma body. Your cultivation is inadequate. When you've reached the divine transfiguration stage and cultivated a heavenly eye, you would be able to see its true form clearly then. Chapter 35, She-Devil. The moment Lu Yang heard the words, Qilin immortality herb, he felt a shiver run down his spine. Qilin have gone extinct, which means that the Qilin immortality herb is also almost extinct. Only a handful had ever existed since time immemorial. Looking back in time, there were hardly any records of this herb. Some even said that there was only one such herb in the world and that the Qilin immortality herb was going through cycles of reincarnation. An ancient sage once speculated that there was in fact no Qilin in the world at all. They were merely figments of people's imagination. The records of Qilin were actually only sightings of Qilin immortality herb. Before people opened their heavenly eye, it was easy for them to mistake the Qilin immortality herb as Qilin, just like how Lu Yang did. Grandpa Ba told me to come and loosen the soil. Oh, so you're here to loosen the soil. You know elemental spells. The little herb kings appeared very excited. There's finally someone here to do the work. Lu Yang had a complicated expression. I can't really say that I'm proficient with it. I learned it by accident, so I'm not sure if it's considered an elemental spell. But I can definitely burrow into the ground. Lu Yang felt that he was performing a spatial spell, just that it had traits similar to that of an elemental spell. It doesn't matter whether it's counted as an elemental spell. It's fine as long as you can burrow into the ground, the time terminus flower said offhandedly. After the earthworm couple went on leave, it would often hear the various complaints from the herbs. They would grumble about the soil being too hard, which made it uncomfortable for growing, and the soil being unbreathable, making them want to pull their roots out for fresh air and to bathe in the sunlight. This put the distressed little herb kings on the spot. But now, the problem could be solved. Extremely few people knew about the existence of herb kings. Lu Yang was one of them before coming. He didn't recognize a single one of them. The little herb king's medicinal properties were out of this world. If they appeared in the outer world, it would be sufficient to drive the formidable cultivators crazy. Wait, I actually do recognize one of them. Lu Yang recognized the sunflower in the time terminus flower's hand. The petals opened and closed, its black skin shedding off and revealing the jade-white pulp that was the herb king's nutrients. The herb king was eating sunflower seeds. And the seeds were strewn across the ground. I wonder if this is counted as cannibalism. Oh, this is called sunflower. The time terminus flower noticed Lu Yang's gaze and introduced. Lu Yang answered in his heart, I know that. The herb kings weren't big, so rather than saying that they were eating sunflower seeds, it looked more like they were hugging the seeds and gnawing on them. He could see that the time terminus flower was enjoying its meal. Terminus king, you're littering again. How many times have I said that we are plants and that we shouldn't follow how humans eat seeds? The seed coat is also edible. The Qilin immortality herb was enraged, berating the time terminus flower for foolishly imitating humans. The time terminus flower continued doing things its own way. I was the one who planted sunflowers. I can eat it however I like. What can you do with me? HMPH. His words pushed the Qilin immortality herb over the edge. The latter pounced toward the time terminus flower, and the two little herb kings began to tussle, rolling over each other but completely not posing any threat. The ginseng doll and three-leaf starry grass were already used to such sights. They were focused on clamoring for Lu Yang to demonstrate how to burrow into the ground. Ignore them. They'll stop fighting when they get tired. Outside the wooden hut, Lu Yang noticed a towering tree. Its roots were as thick as two thighs, and it was in high spirits, its dense foliage of leaves rustling persistently. Tao Enlightenment Tree. Lu Yang was surprised. Even if he returned to his normal size, the Tao Enlightenment Tree could still be considered as blocking out the sky. Even a dozen people wouldn't be enough to completely hug it. There was a flow of charming energy circulating it, its rustling leaves sounding like Taoist sounds. It was as if all Tao had converged into one, shaping the Tao Enlightenment Tree to be mysterious, solemn, and inviolable. This is the Tao Enlightenment Tree I told you about. We all call it Tree King. It's not a stretch to say that its talent in Taoist arts is unparalleled. The leaves of the Tao Enlightenment Tree can help one be enlightened by the Tao. If the tree itself becomes a demon spirit, their talent in cultivation must be ridiculous. Lu Yang couldn't imagine. The little herb kings might appear weak, but they each had their own unique magical abilities and were not to be looked down upon. If they didn't have life-saving skills, they couldn't have survived up until now just based on the compassion of humans alone. The big tree laughed and cursed, Ginseng King, you bastard, overpraising me to my death again. If I'm unparalleled, then what kind of talent does that she-devil have? Who is the she-devil? Lu Yang was curious. Judging by the little herb king's tone, she didn't seem like a good person. Other than little Ba, only the she-devil can come into the herb garden. The she-devil is incredibly powerful. None of us can defeat her. She takes whatever she wants, and no herb can stop her. A few of my old ginseng roots were broken off by her. It was so painful that I had to lie in bed for several days. The ginseng doll chided the she-devil for her outrageous behavior. She also plucked a few stars off my leaves. Look, aren't these few stars dimmer than the rest? I don't know how long it'll take for it to grow back. According to the Herb King's descriptions, the she-devil was laden with innumerable evil deeds and was the common enemy of all herbs. What's even more infuriating is that she said she would take these things back for bathing. Can you imagine? She actually bathed together with our body parts. How perverted. By the way, I heard Little Boss say that the she-devil has a fairly high position in your Tao-seeking sect. Her name is Yunji. Lu Yang. He realized that he was not surprised by the answer. Is it Big Senior Sister's problem or my problem? Lu Yang laughed awkwardly, unsure what to say. About that, the person all of you mentioned, I think I know her. She's my Big Senior Sister. The Tao Enlightenment Tree laughed heartily, dismissing it. That's nothing. Who doesn't know that all you Tao-seeking sect disciples call her Big Senior Sister? Did you think that we'd take our anger out on you just because you said that you're her junior brother? You underestimate us Herb Kings. We have lived for so many years. How could we possibly care about a mere human? Upon seeing how reasonable the Tao Enlightenment Tree was, Lu Yang heaved a sigh of relief. That's great. It seems like it doesn't matter even if I share the same Shifu as her. The Tao Enlightenment Tree's laughter abruptly stopped. Even the gentle breeze halted in its steps, and the rustling of the leaves ceased. The ginseng doll waved its ginseng roots, its composed expression cracking to show a trace of a sinister smile. The three-leaf starry grass had the stars on its leaves swirling like a volcano about to erupt and exact its revenge. Killing intent had suffused the air in an instant. Lu Yang calmly explained, "Don't resort to violence first. Did you really think that I'm on the she-devil's side just because I'm her junior brother?" The ginseng doll stared at Lu Yang suspiciously, waving its roots more slowly. Is that not the case? The Tao Enlightenment Tree and the three-leaf starry grass also temporarily refrained from attacking. Absolutely not, Lu Yang firmly declared. His hands were tightly clenched into fists as he revealed a pained expression of him recounting unbearable memories. That she-devil's behavior is so egregious that it makes my blood boil and my hair stand on end. You are not the only victims of her bullying, even I have received immeasurable suffering. I may seem to be leading an illustrious life with a bright future on the surface, but who can I confide in about the torment I've endured? Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 36, Not a Single Reassuring One. Big Senior Sister may appear to be placid, but she's actually temperamental. It's just that she never shows it on her face. As the saying goes, accompanying a monarch is like accompanying a tiger. Staying by her side is no different from being with a tiger. She's indeed a rare beauty or even the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, but you can't judge a book by its cover. Can you imagine? Every meal, she would make me gnaw on lots of broken limbs of wild beasts and remains of plants. When it was late at night, she would even make me completely soak myself in water filled with the corpses of spirit medicinal herbs, claiming that this could help with strengthening my body. Another time, I wanted to learn spatial spells for more convenient travel in the future, but she taught me how to turn small instead, gripping me with her hand and literally having me toyed within her palm. Lu Yang denounced all of Yunji's atrocities, quickly resonating with the little herb kings and gaining their sympathy. The ginseng doll couldn't help but propose, in that case, let's coordinate to act from both inside and outside. You'll be our inside agent while we'll be your external support. Let's rebel against that she-devil right now. Lu Yang was taken aback and hurriedly dissuaded, absolutely not. We still need to consider this at length. As the #1 disciple of the Tao-seeking sect, Big Senior Sister's cultivation is unfathomably high. I'm afraid that just the few of us won't be a match for her. He calmly analyzed, for our safety, we could wait until my cultivation has reached the transcendent tribulation stage. Our chances will be better that way. Then everyone can act together and retaliate against Big Senior Sister, taking her down in one move. At that time, everyone can exact their revenge and settle their scores. Wouldn't that be better? The little herb kings were impressed. As expected of humans, they're very thorough. We initially thought that your intelligence was inferior to ours, but to think that you came up with such a meticulous plan. It looks like your intelligence is comparable to ours. With a common enemy, Lu Yang and the Little Herb King soon became good buddies. It was a cacophony of noises as they shouted out their intentions to attack the she-devil. With Lu Yang joining us Little Herb Kings, we've become even stronger like tigers that have grown wings. Victory is already within our reach, just like us reaching into our pockets. At the entrance of the herb garden, Grandpa Ba watched how Lu Yang inspired the others with his plan through a water mirror. He slowly let out a sigh. Yunji had instructed him to keep an eye on Lu Yang so that nothing happens to him. However, if an accident did occur, he should inform her right away. Is this current situation considered an accident? If I really tell Yunji, it may become an accident even if it wasn't one. The youngsters nowadays, why is there not a single reassuring one? After all that talk, I realized that I haven't demonstrated my spell to you. Lu Yang stretched himself and prepared to cast the Shrinking Earth spell. Getting into a diving pose, he directly jumped into the earth. The Tao Enlightenment Tree had a similar reaction to Yunji, marveling at the sight. Despite having lived so long, it hadn't seen any spell like it before. On the surface, it seems to be a spatial spell like shrinking Earth to inches. But when it's actually applied, it resembles an elemental spell. He can already cast an unprecedented spell at such a young age. He's truly a spell genius. Now that Lu Yang was entirely in his element with shrinking Earth, he could also pull off diving, breaststroke, butterfly stroke, and even freestyle. Watching how he burrowed in and out of the soil smoothly could easily mislead one into hallucinating that the soil was actually water. After the Qilin Immortality Herb and Time Terminus Flower were done fighting, the Ginseng Doll and Three-Leaf Starry Grass described their tragic experiences under the claws of the she-devil. As Herb Kings finally have an undercover agent planted among the humans. The four Little Herb Kings sat on the branch of the Tao Enlightenment Tree and applauded, finding Lu Yang very powerful. A strange cry emitted from Lu Yang. Pushing off with his legs, he jumped high up. He extended his arms, forming a cross shape and spinning 360 degrees in the air. However, with a grunt, he landed face first on the ground. He had gotten dizzy from spinning midair. Attempt to act cool failed. The Little Herb Kings hastily carried Lu Yang up in a frenzy. Such injuries were just superficial external wounds to Foundation establishment cultivators, it wouldn't take long for them to heal. Seeing that Lu Yang really knew how to loosen the soil, the Little Herb Kings took out a map of the herb garden, asking Lu Yang to follow the sequence when burrowing into the ground. This area of herbs have roots that run very deep, they can reach up to the third layer of soil. You have to be careful not to touch their roots and cause a misunderstanding. My suggestion is to burrow into the soil and loosen it around 3 to 5 meters underground. This is the safe zone. Herbs in other regions have roots reaching from half a meter to 2 meters. Lu Yang was curious. What happens if we touch the root? The Ginseng Doll replied solemnly, we would think that you have a foot fetish. Question marks were almost popping out of Lu Yang's head. The Time Terminus Flower intervened, there are so many perverts among you humans. They like to eat our plant foot skin with beer, saying that it tastes good. For that, they even grow large quantities of it. What's the plant you're talking about? Peanuts. Lu Yang couldn't really keep up with the Little Herb King's train of thoughts. Fortunately, he didn't dwell on his topic longer and started to follow the digging route provided by the Ginseng Doll. The Ginseng Doll was tired from watching the earthworm couple, but it found it entertaining to watch humans burrowing into the ground. It ran behind Lu Yang and followed him closely. The Little Herb Kings were also capable of traversing underground, but their method was different from Lu Yang's. They merged with the earth instead of pushing apart the soil like Lu Yang. The soil in areas Lu Yang passed by became soft, just right for the Little Herb Kings. The Tao Enlightenment Tree watched them having fun and sighed. Sadly, trees can't burrow into the ground. It then looked up at the sun and found it scorching hot, sighing again. Why am I so tall? I can't even find shade to sit in. The Tao Enlightenment Tree felt that the world was full of malice toward it. The Little Herb Kings followed right behind Lu Yang's buttocks and played for the whole day. On the way back, they were still frolicking around and giggling, boil some water for a bath. The Tao Enlightenment Tree had already prepared a wooden bucket filled to the brim with water, drawn from the stream that irrigated the herbs. A bright light appeared from the Qilin Immortality herb's stomach and slowly moved upward. It finally ended at the mouth, causing it to spew out Qilin True Fire. The Qilin Immortality herb was just like the real Qilin. It was no wonder that the ancient people claimed that they had seen a Qilin. The Qilin True Fire had an extremely high temperature. In a split second, the water was already bubbling. The little herb kings jumped in one after another, closing their eyes as they floated about on the water surface. Lu Yang found this sight very familiar, as if he had seen something similar in the kitchen before. Oh, I remember now. This is called medicinal cuisine. 1. But it's still my first time seeing the ingredients jumping into the pot so enthusiastically. Soon, medicinal fragrance wafted through the air. Lu Yang inhaled a deep breath and instantly became invigorated, even finding that his cultivation seemed to be on the verge of improving. As expected of herb kings, their medicinal power is really terrifying. Lu Yang watched the little herb kings playing in the water and couldn't help but smile helplessly. I recall Big Senior Sister mentioning that longevity is a poison, a kind of pain and suffering that no ordinary person can endure. Only those with characters beyond a normal person can bear the misery of immortality. The little herb kings lived through countless ages, witnessing an unimaginable number of major historical events. Those people and matters might have long passed, but only the little herb kings still live. I'm afraid it's precisely because of their childlike personalities that they can live so long without breaking down. It's just that, they're too gullible. Chapter 37, Herb King Spirit Elixir. Under the resplendent night sky, the Tao Enlightenment Tree's imposing figure blocked out the moonlight. The little herb kings were still playing gleefully in the water, and even Lu Yang joined in the fun. Time seemed to have come to a standstill in front of this harmonious sight. After the little herb kings were comfortable with their bath, they sprawled out on the ground and ceiling of the wooden hut, snoring loudly as they slept. The Tao Enlightenment Tree didn't let this time go to waste. It put away the wooden bucket and water, something Lu Yang found puzzling. "What are you doing?" Lu Yang asked. The Tao Enlightenment King casually replied, "Oh, this is for little Ba. He said that their bathwater is worth a lot of money. The Tao-seeking sect disciples love to use it." It shook its branches like someone shrugging, expressing its helplessness toward the behavior of humans. As a plant, it was hard for it to understand some of humans' strange actions. "I know that humans like to use my hair or what they call leaves to brew tea. They also like to use my skin to prepare meals, claiming that it can improve the fragrance. I think they call it cinnamon or something. Oh, by the way, little Ba even gave the bathwater a nice name. It's called Herb King Spirit Elixir. I have to give it to you humans. You are much more cultured when it comes to names. Herb King Spirit Elixir." Lu Yang subconsciously repeated the name, finding it familiar. He soon remembered where he had seen the term before. Isn't this the extremely popular Herb King Spirit Elixir on the Contribution Points Rewards board? The list described the Herb King Spirit Elixir as a precious elixir specially concocted by the higher-ups of the Tao-seeking sect. So this is what they mean by, specially concocted. Lu Yang began to question the various bizarre items on the board. Although the description may seem to have no problems, it doesn't mean that it really has no problems. In the following days, Lu Yang worked diligently to burrow into the ground, all the while hearing the little herb kings chatter incessantly about medicinal knowledge. With that, his days were very fulfilling. I remember that there's an area of 8 treasure lotus flowers ahead. They're pink and tender, and they look amazing. Do you want to burrow there and take a look? The ginseng doll asked from behind Lu Yang. Lotus flowers grow in ponds, right? That's right. The ginseng doll nodded matter-of-factly. Then if I burrow there, wouldn't I be diving headfirst into a pond? The ginseng doll finally realized. Oh, you're right. That makes sense. Lu Yang gave up on communicating. Following the ginseng doll's directions, Lu Yang burrowed his way through and emerged from the earth. Not far away were the magnificent 8 treasure lotus flowers. Morning dew condensed on its petals, some dripping into the water and creating gentle ripples. 8 treasure lotus flowers could help dispel heat and dampness, and it had efficacies in detoxification and nourishing the heart, so it was often used in concocting pills. I just don't know why 8 treasure lotus flowers have the term 8 treasure, Lu Yang remarked, recalling the information he saw from the books. This was an unsolved mystery among pill-concocting masters. Numerous pill-concocting masters wrote books, citing the classics and mentioning various viewpoints. For example, some mentioned that the reason was because 8 treasure lotus flowers had 8 types of efficacies. Others mentioned that the name evolved from Taoist Bagua, while there were even those who claimed that 8 treasure referred to the 8 meridians in the human body and that eating more 8 treasure lotus flowers could open up the 8 extra meridians. 1. Lu Yang leaned more toward the first hypothesis that there were 8 types of efficacies. I can't say much about the rest, but at least the first reason sounds reliable. The ginseng doll asked, "Are you referring to this?" "I know. You know." The ginseng doll crossed its ginseng roots at its hip, smugly replying, "That's right. Devotee Guyu was the one who discovered the 8 treasure lotus flowers. At that time, both of us happened to enter an undiscovered secret domain. Fortunately, both of our cultivation were high, so it wasn't dangerous for us. The two of us played to our heart's content in the secret domain. When we got tired, we would rest, eat, and sleep on the spot for the atmosphere. When we were eating, Devotee Guyu found a patch of pink lotus flowers that he had never seen before. I asked him how he wanted to name them. He glanced at the 8 treasure kanji 2 in this hand and offhandedly suggested that we could just call it 8 treasure lotus flower. Afterward, he took away a few lotus flowers and made them multiply in the outside world, leading to the scale of propagation you see today. Lu Yang didn't know what to say. It wasn't his first time hearing about Devotee Guyu's story. Every time, the ending would be unexpected. The other little herb kings had also traveled far and wide, having experienced many matters, but none of their experiences were as exciting as the ginseng dolls. As the little herb kings interacted with Lu Yang, they gradually came to accept him. Even if Lu Yang returned to his original size, the little herb kings wouldn't discriminate against him but instead find his big size fun. A month passed by in the blink of an eye. During this period, Grandpa Ba had taken away the transparent spirit stones and bathwater from the little herb kings, bringing back a large quantity of spirit stones for the little herb kings to bury back in their original places. Grandpa Ba would even pick many ingredients and provide them to the Pill Cadron Peak from time to time. Devotee Guyu originally didn't go by this name. His surname was Hu, so he called himself Devotee Hu. However, his handwriting wasn't very good. There was once he wrote his surname, Hu, with the components written too far apart, causing people to read it separately as Devotee Guyu. 3. Right then, Little Ba transmitted an auditory message to Lu Yang. "Lu Yang, come out for a bit." When he arrived at the entrance of the herb garden, he saw a loving husband and wife. The husband was radiating sunlight and confidence, while the wife was adorable and reliant on her husband. However, Lu Yang didn't dare to commend their choice of clothing. This content is taken from F.E.E. Webnov. L.co?. The couple was wearing ordinary clothes that resembled a swimming ring, looking so incomparably swollen to the point they could even stay afloat if they fell into the sea. This was their clan's custom for clothing. These two are. Let me introduce, these are your seniors, the silver-ringed monarch earthworms, Grandpa Ba presented. Realization hit Lu Yang. It looks like they've settled their marital conflict and made up with each other. I don't have to dig the soil anymore. To think that they resolved their emotional dispute so quickly in just a month. I thought it'd take a television series of at least 40 to 50 episodes with the female lead losing her memories and the male lead awakening her memory before they welcome their happily ever after. He's called Lu Yang. The both of you probably have heard of him before. He is the sect leader's 4th disciple and personally trained by Yunji. Nice to meet you, seniors. Lu Yang bowed, frightening the silver-ringed monarch earthworms until their hearts were shuddering. They quickly got him to stand up straight, not daring to receive his greetings. You are Yunji's little junior brother. I'm Li Yin, you can just call me Little Li. This is my wife Xiao Li. Who dares to treat the she-devil's little junior brother as a junior? Lu Yang was completely oblivious to everyone's impression of Yunji. How did you solve your relationship issue? What's so difficult about that? A voice came from beneath the ground. A husband and wife burrowed out of the ground, their appearance exactly the same as the silver-ringed monarch earthworm. Since my wife has split herself into two and became a pair of beautiful sisters, I naturally can also split myself into two and create a brother, Little Li said proudly. Little Li husband and wife the second were also very affectionate. Little Ba nodded with satisfaction. I was the one who came up with this idea. I'm a very responsible person. Since I caused the problem, I should solve it. Chapter 38. The farewell scene is rather moving. Lu Yang was at a loss for words. He simply didn't know what to make of such a method that challenged morals, ethics, and social norms. All's good as long as the matter is resolved. He finally managed to force a sentence out. Grandpa Ba also thought that it was a good thing for the problem to be solved, especially because he came up with the solution. He patted Lu Yang's shoulder. The little herb kings are very mischievous. It has been hard on you this while. Take out your jade pendant. Lu Yang did as he was told, and Grandpa Ba tapped his jade pendant. The mission reward of 300 contribution points is already inside your jade pendant. When one works hard, it will pay off. My efforts didn't go to waste. 300 contribution points was considered a big sum for Lu Yang. That said, although 300 points may seem like a lot, I can't seem to even afford the little herb king's foot-washing water. It was clearly written on the rewards board that the Herb King Spirit Elixir was separated into regular and deluxe versions. Based on what Lu Yang had understood, the regular version was the little Herb King's foot-washing water while the deluxe version was their bathwater. Say goodbye to the little Herb Kings. There aren't many opportunities to enter the herb garden. I'm afraid you won't have the chance to return in the future. Grandpa Ba paused halfway as he suddenly remembered something. As long as Yunji asked Lu Yang to come, he could only obediently let him in. Ahem, anyways, go and say your goodbyes. Lu Yang made a sound of acknowledgement. He kept feeling that Grandpa Ba didn't finish saying everything. Upon learning that Lu Yang was leaving, the little herb kings were somewhat reluctant. Since we are all friends, you can take my old ginseng whiskers with you. Oh, it's too valuable, I can't bear to part with it. What about my old ginseng skin? Never mind, it's too painful. I don't have anything valuable here. I'll just say goodbye to you verbally then, the ginseng doll told Lu Yang. I also didn't give anything to devotee Gaiyu when we bid farewell. The three-leaf starry grass, Tone revealed his reluctance to see Lu Yang go. We are all cultivators. 1 month isn't a long time. If you're leaving, just go, why do you still need to inform us? My vines and leaves have too much vital energy. Your body will mutate if you take them. To be safe, I shall not give it to you then. Through their time together, Lu Yang had learned that the Qilin Immortality Herb's original form was a green vine. What the Qilin Immortality Herb said was true. During the past month, the little herb kings had been suppressing the vital energy inside their bodies, fearing that they might knock Lu Yang out. If they gave a part of their body to Lu Yang, they must add multiple layers of seals, and Lu Yang also wouldn't dare to use them. It's time for goodbye, yet you're still not giving us our presents. The time Terminus flower solicited a gift from Lu Yang instead. Infected by the atmosphere, Lu Yang's eyes were brimming with hot tears. After some time, I'll definitely let Big Senior Sister visit everyone. The little herb kings quickly told Lu Yang to move, chasing him away. The farewell scene was rather moving. 1, If Lu Yang didn't compare it with the price of the Herb King Spirit Elixir, the 300 contribution points would be an enormous sum for a foundation establishment cultivator like himself. He was eager to make use of it and headed to the Great Mission Hall to buy some good stuff. I can't keep counting on Big Senior Sister to give me stuff. I need to rely on myself and work hard to earn money. Oh, I was just about to go to Heaven's Gate Peak to look for you. I didn't expect to meet you here. Meng Jingzhou was a little surprised to see Lu Yang walking out from the herb garden. On second thought, considering that Yunji was Lu Yang's senior sister, he no longer found it strange. Beside Meng Jingzhou was a burly man clad in scholarly robes. He was refined in deportment and appeared physically strong. The man cupped his fists. Brother Lu, long time no see. Come to think of it, this is our first official meeting. Man Ji Yu, everyone totally didn't expect you to become Fourth Elder's disciple back then. Lu Yang returned the greeting and smiled. Do you need something from me? You mean I can't look for you if there's nothing I need from you? Meng Jingzhou pretended to be angry. Come, let's sit down, drink some tea, and talk about it slowly. Meng Jingzhou led Man Jiyu and Lu Yang to a tea house. One of the Meng family's teachings was to discuss matters over a meal. That way, if the conversation went well, the Meng family would treat, and if things didn't go well, everyone would split the bill. Dear guests, what would you like to drink? We have all kinds of tea here in our tea house. A tea waiter too was swift to approach them. Lu Yang couldn't discern the tea waiter's cultivation. He lowered his voice, Brother Man Jiyu, what cultivation is this tea waiter at? Can you tell? Man Jiyu similarly lowered his voice, from what I know, the newly recruited disciples are the weakest in the sect. Even the chickens in the mountains have higher cultivation than us. This content is taken from F.E.E.M.O.V.com. Meng Jingzhou ordered a very famous tea. Then let's have a pot of milk tea. 3. For a moment, the tea waiter suspected that Meng Jingzhou was sent by their rival to intentionally cause trouble. Oh, I said it wrongly. Let's have a basin of milk tea. I recall that it's a specialty near the extreme north. Noticing the tea waiter's darkened expression, he hurriedly gestured that he bore no ill intentions. Only then did the tea waiter understand that Meng Jingzhou wanted freshly made salted milk tea. Soon, the tea waiter carried a hot metal brazier. In it were stir-fried millet, butter, beef jerky, and clotted cream. He then came back again with a pot of milk tea. Lu Yang and Man Jiyu exchanged confused looks, so they could only leave it to Meng Jingzhou. The latter first stir-fried the ingredients inside the brazier until the millet turned yellow and gave off a crunchy texture. Then he lifted the pot of milk tea and poured all of it inside the basin. When the milk tea contacted the red-hot iron, it sizzled, and the fragrance of the milk tea wafted out, assaulting one's nostrils. Lu Yang took a sip and smacked his lips. It's salty. The taste is wonderful and quite delicious. Man Jiyu also took a sip, then guzzled it down, finishing one whole bowl. Meng Jingzhou asked, are you currently taking on any mission? Lu Yang shook his head. He still hadn't found his next mission after completing the one for Grandpa Ba in the herb garden. There aren't many missions suitable for us, and the ones in the Great Mission Hall are definitely not sufficient. I found this to be strange. If there aren't enough for us, then how was it enough for the previous cohort of senior brothers and sisters? That's why, I asked around and learned the inside story from our senior brothers and sisters. What did you find out? The missions issued by the Great Mission Hall are not the only missions we can complete. Finding a mission by yourself and completing it can also earn you contribution points and other rewards. After you submit the results of the mission to the sect, they will verify its veracity and reward you accordingly. Do you know how the missions in the Great Mission Hall come about? How? There are 3 types of scenarios. The first one is based on the Righteous Path Mutual Aid Agreement between the 5 great immortal sects and the Great Xia Dynasty. When they lack cultivators for certain matters, they will request for our help. However, such scenarios are rare. Although everyone is part of the human righteous path, it's still somewhat embarrassing for an esteemed dynasty established for 100,000 years to seek help from the sects. The second scenario is when someone seeks out the great 5 immortal sects for help, hoping that we can uphold justice. However, the premise is that the Great Xia Dynasty doesn't intervene. One example is your parrot catching mission. The third scenario is when we discover some clues during our travels. They will be issued as missions in the Great Mission Hall, and the sect will prepare the corresponding rewards. Our hope lies in the third scenario. Chapter 39. Junior brother, do you know that the Tao-seeking sect is a righteous sect? Of course, not everything can be considered as a mission. All 3 scenarios I've mentioned have a common prerequisite, upholding the righteous path. Coincidentally, Brother Man Jiyu has discovered a mission suitable for us. It's hard for him to complete it alone, so he has called us along. Man Jiyu simply nodded, not saying anything else. He indeed bore the humility of a gentleman. Lu Yang asked, so when should we set off? What about early tomorrow morning? Meng Jingzhou suggested. This suited Lu Yang perfectly. He wanted to redeem some items from the Great Mission Hall before setting off. With the contribution points he had accumulated, he kept feeling the temptation to spend them. Iced gourd. The water inside the gourd chills rapidly and provides a refreshing sensation. It's the best choice for people who like iced drinks. 3 contribution points. Multifunctional folding knife. Its features include an ear pick, nail clipper, marker brush, and compass, a must-have for outdoors. 10 contribution points. Buddhist Dragon Blood Saber. It was once a magical treasure of a diabolic cultivator. Its bloodthirstiness is activated with dragon blood, and its ferocity is suppressed by Buddhist techniques. Slicing through flesh and bone is as easy as taking something out of your pocket. This blade has now been cleansed of its devil aura and its ferocity subdued, but it is slightly less sharp. The selling price is 300 contribution points. Fragments of Maha Inner Cultivation Method. Text fragments of an inner cultivation method left behind by an ascetic monk after self-immolation. Believed to be an original inner cultivation method, the original version can no longer be verified. This fragment can calm the hyperactive mind and aid in swiftly entering a meditative state. The selling price is 1500 contribution points. Lu Yang continued browsing several more items, but none of them were to his liking, so he inquired with the senior male disciple on guard duty. Senior brother, I'll be going out to gain experience tomorrow, so I hope to buy some self-defense items. Do you have any recommendations? The senior male disciple was tall and burly. His face was filled with ferocious-looking muscles that could make a child stop crying. In fact, he looked exactly like the target a chivalrous hero would eliminate. He glanced at Lu Yang, finding him unfamiliar, but he soon realized that Lu Yang was one of the newly recruited disciples. Thinking of how he could finally be addressed as senior brother, his expression relaxed. How many years has it been? I'm finally not at the bottom among disciples. How many contribution points and spirit stones have you budgeted? 300 contribution points, no spirit stones. My name is Li Dan. You can address me as Senior Brother Li. Since you are at Foundation Establishment, the grade of items you can use isn't high, so it won't cost too many contribution points. Contrary to Li Dan's fierce appearance, he was actually a very kind man at heart. He skillfully scrolled through the rewards board and introduced the various defense-type items. 100 Battle Heart Protecting Mirror. When worn at the chest, it can withstand an all-out blow from an Apex Foundation Establishment cultivator. It only costs 200 contribution points. Just as Lu Yang was contemplating whether he should buy one to save his life in a pinch, he heard a timid voice. Junior brother Lu, actually, you don't have to buy a heart-protecting mirror here. The Xiaobing one from the dining hall can also withstand an all-out blow from an Apex Foundation Establishment cultivator, and it's even cheaper than this. The voice grew increasingly quieter. Toward the end, it became almost as soft as a fly flapping their wings. If not for Lu Yang's heightened senses from being at the Foundation Establishment stage, he might have missed it. Senior Sister Zhou Lulu. Lu Yang was surprised. The first month of him joining the Tao-seeking sect, he had spent most of his time in the scripture library, and he would consult Zhou Lulu whenever he encountered something he didn't understand. After being confined by Yunji in Heaven's Gate Peak for cultivation training, he hadn't seen Zhou Lulu since. Before he knew it, a year had already passed. Senior Sister. Li Dan was only senior to Lu Yang by one cohort, so he had to address Zhou Lulu as Senior Sister. It's me. Zhou Lulu was visibly nervous as she spoke. She had just finished a mission and came to redeem her rewards. That was when she happened to bump into Lu Yang. You two can continue browsing. I was just giving a small suggestion, nothing else. Afraid of meeting the two's gaze, Zhou Lulu hid far away and tried to minimize her presence. She planned to redeem her rewards after Lu Yang was done with his. The two stopped paying attention to Zhou Lulu. This is the Mountain Quaking Hammer. One strike has accompanying vibration effects, and it can disrupt the other party's rhythm in setting up arrays or talismans. It has some degree of suppression effects toward array and talisman cultivators. However, cultivators proficient in arrays and talismans have strong mental willpower and remain composed in the face of danger. They can adjust their rhythm even if they encounter disruptions. In such cases, the Mountain Quaking Hammer would be much less effective. It costs 270 contribution points. Lu Yang nodded. This is also good stuff. Who knows if I may come across opponents who are array or talisman cultivators. Except for cultivators that have immersed themselves in arrays and talismans for years, this Mountain Quaking Hammer would have some use. Zhou Lulu softly muttered by the side again. The Yutiao in the dining hall also has similar effects. The two pretended not to have heard her. Senior brother Li, are there gadgets that can ambush others? Li Dan's expression turned solemn. Junior brother, do you know that the Tao-seeking sect is a righteous sect? What about it? So you have to ask this question quietly. Oh. Li Dan scrolled down the rewards board rapidly. He found the right moment and tapped the rewards board, continuing with his introduction. These are jade fragment needles. They are as fine as ox hair and become extremely sharp after being infused with spirit energy, capable of piercing through barriers. However, they're hard to master, requiring much practice, and the price is also quite expensive. This is a Kimon 2 nail. Against strong enemies, you can throw a handful toward their 7 orifices to gain an unexpected victory through a surprise move. It is easy to master, and the price is also appropriate. Lu Yang nodded. This item is really not expensive. It's cheaper than its true worth. The rice in the dining hall is more useful than this. Zhou Lulu reminded from the side. Li Dan couldn't tolerate Zhou Lulu's murmuring anymore. He suddenly turned around, frightening Zhou Lulu. The latter lowered her head, not daring to look straight at the fierce-looking Li Dan. She didn't have any intentions of causing trouble, but she truly found the things from the dining hall to be very useful. She wanted to recommend it to Lu Yang directly but was too shy to do so. From how Zhou Lulu behaved, Li Dan could tell that she didn't have any ill intentions, and his tone involuntarily softened. Senior Sister Zhou, I know that you are from the 100 Refinements Peak, but you can't harm our newcomer just because you want to bring in more sales for your peak. And Junior Brother Lu, think about it. Besides being cheap, sturdy, durable, multifunctional, serving as both weapons and food, what other benefits are there to the dining hall's food? Lu Yang didn't know how to answer. Are these benefits still not enough? Li Dan thought for a bit. Apart from the appearances not being suitable for combat, it does seem like there are no other flaws to the food from the dining hall. Senior Sister Zhou, how about you take Junior Brother Lu to the dining hall for a tour? Zhou Lulu's eyes lit up, and she quickly pulled Lu Yang to the dining hall. Lu Yang realized that Zhou Lulu had a terrifyingly strong grip, he couldn't break free at all. I wonder what cultivation level Senior Sister Lu is at. Senior Sister Lu, you are from the 100 Refinements Peak. The 100 Refinements Peak was under the 5th Elder's name. Its two main functions were crafting weapons and managing the dining hall, though most of the time, these two roles overlapped into one. Zhou Lulu replied, that's right, I'm a disciple from the 100 Refinements Peak. But I often see you reading in the scripture library, and they didn't seem to be about forging artifacts. Lu Yang was bewildered. Shouldn't disciples from the 100 Refinements Peak study how to refine artifacts? Chapter 40, The Dining Hall. Zhou Lulu's expression was one of visible frustration. I like reading books, and I want to become a disciple of 4th Elder who specializes as a Confucian cultivator. However, my dad insisted that I choose the 100 Refinements Peak, claiming that 4th Elder has gone silly from reading books and that I can't learn from him. Your father is 5th Elder, Zhou Xin. Lu Yang instantly shut his mouth. The 100 Refinements Peak belongs to your family. Of course, your dad would want you to choose your family business. The 100 Refinements Peak was dyed in crimson and towered into the clouds, resembling an erupting volcano lighting up the horizon. The temperature here would always be slightly higher than other places, but it was unclear whether it was due to their long-term weapon crafting activities or if it had always been like this. Spring had just begun, but it felt like the 100 Refinements Peak was already in summer. Lu Yang's skin felt prickly, as if something was trying to burrow inside his body. He instinctively manipulated his cultivation technique, forming a protective membrane as thin as a cicada wing covering his body. Zhou Lulu explained softly, what you felt should be metal qi. There are too many magical treasures crafted at the 100 Refinements Peak, so the air is suffused with metal qi. However, it isn't harmful to cultivators. You just have to get used to it. That said, Junior Brother, your reaction was very quick. Few people could do it like you did. Lu Yang chuckled, my cultivation technique is very useful. Lu Yang could also hear clanging sounds. He imagined that there were probably senior disciples striking a metal with a large hammer intensely with sparks flying everywhere until steel was forged through multiple refinements. He followed the direction of the sounds, and realized that it was the dining hall. Lu Yang felt that it was somewhat acceptable. I'm used to it. The entrance to the dining hall was a lively sight. People came and went, engaged in their lively conversations. They would carry all kinds of food and brandish them like they were wandering heroes wielding sharp blades. Even the disciples who passed by the dining hall to buy a meal after their classes looked like heroes who had just walked out of a weapon store. Is Li Haoran here? Lu Yang recalled that Li Haoran, who had a fire spirit root, was a disciple under 5th elder. In theory, they should be at a similar level, but Lu Yang didn't know exactly which cultivation stage Li Haoran was at. Zhou Lulu shook her head. Junior brother Li hasn't exited from his seclusion, so he isn't qualified to buy a meal at the dining hall. My father said that Li Haoran's foundation is very good, so he needs to soak in lava longer to achieve better progress. I heard others say that they heard blood-curdling screams from junior brother Li when he first bathed in lava, but there was no sound afterward, so he's probably cooking. Is there a possibility that he isn't cooking but rather got cooked? 1. Lu Yang didn't expect that his bathing in boiling water wasn't the worst. Big senior sister was still too kind to me. It's a pity that I didn't get to meet Li Haoran, otherwise we could have exchanged our insights on bathing. When Zhou Lulu arrived at the bustling dining hall, her fervor vanished without a trace. She secretly retreated 2 steps back, and she spoke as rapidly as a machine gun. Junior brother Lu, the food in the dining hall is of high quality and reasonably priced. Go ahead and buy it yourself. Before the last word left her mouth, she had already run off. Lu Yang didn't even see how she disappeared. He sighed. Looks like I can only count on myself. Braised fish bones in soy sauce, freshly made braised fish bones in soy sauce. The best choice for cutting down trees and humans. Everyone who has used them says that they're great. Xiaobing, fresh meat xiaobing fresh out of the oven. They won't break even with punches and kicks. Come and take a look. Noodles that are even harder than steel and bones, and essential for binding people. They can't break free once bound. Purchase now and get a complimentary binding tutorial. The dining hall was like a food market in the mortal world where the vendors would hawk their own food. The only difference was that the dining hall was much noisier than a marketplace, the vendors were of high cultivation and had louder voices. Lu Yang noticed a senior male disciple holding a braised fish bone that looked like a sharp blade. Just a light scrape would result in a deep wound, as if bitten by a ferocious shark. The senior male disciple promoted enthusiastically, "Junior brother, would you like a fish bone? This is from a fish demon in the Blue Wave Pool, and it was at the Apex Foundation establishment stage, so the fish bones it left behind are very sturdy. It took me a very long time before I finally crafted these few bones. This can be used as a weapon in combat and food when hungry." Crunch. He bit down on a fish bone. I have no idea how he trained his teeth. Lu Yang checked out the very useful fish bone then glanced at the price. Right, I can't afford it. Seeing Lu Yang's apologetic smile, the male disciple didn't force him and continued promoting to others. Lu Yang saw another senior male disciple putting his hand directly into the pot of oil to take out the yutiao and drain the oil. "Junior brother, do you want one? There are ones suitable for Foundation Establishment and Golden Core respectively. The Foundation Establishment ones only cost 150 contribution points." In terms of price, it was indeed cheaper than the Mountain Quaking Hammer on the redemption list. The latter cost 270 contribution points while the Yutiao only cost 150 contribution points, almost half of it. My Yutiao's strength isn't only its sturdiness. It comprises 3 layers of covert force. A single strike combined with the 3 layers of hidden force could unleash tremendous power, delivering a surprise blow to the enemy. If you are hungry and want to eat it, that's also fine. It has a long shelf life. The senior male disciple even took a bite. The 3 layers of covert force blasted inside his mouth, but other than his mouth bulging for a moment, nothing else happened. "Senior brother, I'm new here, so there are some things I don't understand. Why can our Yutiao be both a weapon and food? Can you really bite through them?" The senior male disciple discerned Lu Yang's cultivation. Since this junior brother is at Foundation Establishment, he's definitely from the newest batch. It's normal for a newcomer to ask such a question. This is a way to train and verify the results of our training in refining the body. In body refinement, one must refine the internal organs, muscles and bones while also refining the outer skin and 7 orifices. Only then can they be counted as a true physique cultivator. Apart from that, the teeth are also an indispensable part. I heard that some physique cultivators only refine their muscle, bones, and skin to the extreme. Just a brute collision from them would even lead to mountains shaking. They can be considered excellent. However, others are very troubled when they face these impenetrable physique cultivators, so they thought of a solution. What solution? They used body transformation spells like size at will to shrink their body and attack these physique cultivators from the inside. As these physique cultivators didn't reinforce their organs, they are very susceptible to these kinds of attacks. These people are not considered as true physique cultivators, or they can be called unorthodox physique cultivators. The senior male disciple clinked his teeth, producing the sound of metal clanging. People like them who crafted artifacts were considered half a physique cultivator. Although their body's strength couldn't be compared to a true physique cultivator, their bodies had been refined internally and externally. Ordinary cultivators use magical treasures as weapons, while a physique cultivator's strongest weapon is their body. Since it's their strongest weapon, eating yutiao isn't a hard thing. Lu Yang finally understood. The food in the dining hall has strong functionalities that were divided into two main purposes: selling them as weapons to cultivators like me who aren't physique cultivators and selling them as food to physique cultivators. Meng Jingzhou became a disciple of Third Elder and is a bona fide physique cultivator, so he should be able to bite through it, Lu Yang murmured to himself. He bought a yutiao and swung it twice, finding it heavy and compact. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories. And never miss out on a great listen.